Dr. Jones, we've heard a great deal about you.
Have you?
Professor of archaeology, expert on the occult, and how does one say it? Obtainer of rare antiquities.
Indiana Jones. Always knew someday you'd come walking back through my door.
When I was done with Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, there was a reason that I invented the shot of Harrison riding a horse into the sunset, because I thought that brought the curtain down on the trilogy, and then we were all going to move on and mature into other aspects of filmmaking, and I never thought I would ever see Indiana Jones again, which, by the way, in a sweet, nostalgic way, was fine with me at the time. But there were some people it wasn't fine with. And I think it started with the fans. But I just remember people asking me, when are you making the next Indiana Jones? And that was a question that was not only asked of me, but it was asked of Harrison. And I know it was asked of George Lucas. All of us have been asked that question. Harrison was the person that took it seriously. And he finally called me and said, why don't we make one of these pictures? There's a fan base out there that wants it. And I have to give the credit to Harrison for starting the ball rolling, and then for George in working on me to get me to consider the possibility of more stories, or at least one more story. George Lucas had this idea for Indiana Jones, and it was basically, hey, let's do aliens. He said this will be like a B movie. It'll be like those 1950s B movies, Earth versus Flying Saucers, and all those exploitation movies that were really about government paranoia, Cold War fears and things like that, and Hollywood turned them into invaders from Mars.
It was the idea of taking the genre from the 1930s serials, action-adventure serials, to the B science fiction movies of the 50s, in the early 50s. And I said, if we move the whole thing into the 50s, which would be age appropriate for Harrison, that would be the cinematic equivalent. And I wanted to rest it on a cinematic antecedent like we did with the other one.
Clearly I've chosen the wrong pressure point. Perhaps I can find a more sensitive one. Приведите женщину!
We couldn't do Nazis again, and I wouldn't have done that anyway. But because of the 50s, the other thing about the 50s was the Cold War, and the Red Menace, as it used to be known in America, and the threat of nuclear annihilation, nuclear intimidation. That was something that was in the headlines every single day, and so the Russians got the job.
Russians.
This ain't gonna be easy.
Not as easy as it used to be.
The skull was stolen from Akator in the 15th century. Whoever returns it to the
city temple will gain control over its powers. I've heard that bedtime story before.
What the Indiana Jones movies have always done really well is play with existing mythology and bend it to their storytelling purposes, you know? So everything in it is drawn from real mythology.
There may be hundreds of skulls at Akator, perhaps thousands. Whoever finds them will control the greatest natural force the world has ever known. Power over the mind of man.
You know, there are crystal skulls, you know, and there are large groups of people that believe all these things. So, could be true, could be not, we don't know. But the closer you can stick to real legends, the better the movie's gonna work, I think.
I hadn't worn the Indiana Jones costume for 18 years. And early in our production process, the costume was sent to my house for me to try on, to see where we would have to change sizes. And I put it on, and it fit like a glove. I felt really comfortable and ready to go.
The hat is great, the whip is great. Harrison looks great in the hat with the jacket holding the whip.
You could take a still from each of the 4 movies of him in the hat and the coat, a full shot. And I don't think he'd be able to figure out which one was which, because he looks just like he did in all the other movies.
Isn't that great? Something like this is what we need to release first. Okay. We start releasing what Harrison looks like in the costume.
The whip came back pretty easily too. I wasn't surprised because it's a relatively uncommon skill, and I was able to bring it back in a couple of weeks of pretty diligent application.
We did a costume and makeup test on Harrison, and I had to kind of walk out of the light a few feet just to take a few deep breaths before going back to work. Because seeing him looking that good, it was kind of like, what happened to the last 19 years? How the heck did they go by that fast? My God. And that was scary, but it was also beautiful. And it was something we all shared together.
I think that's the interesting thing about this series is that because so many of us work together, Frank, who I'm now married to because we met on the first Raiders.
Kathy and Frank, you know, they met on the first Indiana Jones and then eventually got married. And Kathy's been working with Steven ever since. And, you know, so this is like a reunion of all of us coming back together again after all these years. And it's been a huge amount of fun.
Steven really wanted this movie to be a surprise for the audience when they got to the movie theater. So it had to be kind of a secret. We had to do everything very carefully so the surprises didn't get out. So we had to name it another name, and Steven chose the name Genre. So we went around the whole time being called Genre, not Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
This is sunrise on the first morning in New Mexico. And here we go, caravanning our way to start shooting Indiana Jones 4.
So here we are again, 18 years later. How time flies. No one's changed, we all look the same. But anyway, I'm really happy to be back on Indiana Jones, and, oh, I can't say the title, okay. I just want to say, you know, break a leg, have a good shoot, do your best work, and here's looking at you kids. Once the production began, it was like I had just finished the last film 3 years ago, and we were typically on to the fourth adventure. It just like no time had passed at all. What happens is, or he can be taken, dragged a bit, he can be taken out of here like this, and then he's thrown down so he's near the hat. Right. Well, you know, when our story begins, we find Indiana Jones in the trunk of a car. And that was George's idea. George said, you know, I'd love to introduce Harrison this time playing Indy in the trunk of a car. And I said, that's fine by me.
I thought it would be nice to have him trapped in the back of a car with another guy and in a really desperate situation that we've grown to love with Indiana Jones. And it's, you know, a new step for introducing him. I thought after all these years it would be fun to do that and to do the unexpected.
And cut, good.
Steven had a really, really beautiful idea of reintroducing Harrison through means of creating Shadow of the Hat, which is a very iconic item of his wardrobe, which is really very much of a Steven Spielberg way of reintroducing or introducing characters.
He'll turn to you and he'll say Russians.
When I first realised that I was actually in an Indiana Jones film, it was in New Mexico. When the camera goes onto the hat, the hand comes in, it picks it up, and you see the hat go onto his head, but it's the shadow on the car. So the shadow puts the hat on, and then Indiana Jones turns the camera and goes, Russians. And I go, hey, whoa. You're in an Indiana Jones movie, you know, and that is the spirit of it.
Hey, Mark.
We needed to get a really good villain, and we made the choice to go with a woman. And then once we did that, then it was a matter of who would be the very best person to create a really strong villainous character.
When Kate read the script, she immediately knew what Spalko should look like, and so that was the character.
I had a look at yearbooks of people's high school photos in the 50s, and I found a couple of pictures, one of a Russian girl and one of an American girl with an incredibly short fringe, and I just thought that really emphasised the eyes, so that's in the end what we went with. I'd never actually met Harrison before the first day of shooting, and so it seemed perfectly right that the first time I should meet him, he would be in costume.
Director friends of mine who have worked with her said, don't be surprised if she disappears into this character, and they were absolutely right. The minute I would say action, bang, she was Irina.
We will do this old-fashioned way. You will tell us. You will help us find what we seek.
Готово, товарищ полковник.
Давай!
And cut, next shot, thank you. That'll be nice because we'll be able to be back here with all this, and we'll see them arguing out the door. As tradition dictates, we find Dr. Jones teaching a class in archaeology, and along comes the dean of the school, sadly not Marcus Brody, who has passed on, but the new dean, who interrupts the class the same way Marcus Brody used to always stand there right by the door waiting for the class to end, and pulls Indy out and takes him into the hallway and basically tells him that he's been fired from the university.
What?
Cut! Print! Beautiful! We got it.
We're shooting here at Yale University. It's kind of special to me because 25 years ago or so we decided to call the college that Indiana Jones teaches at Marshall College. We're not real sure why it's called Marshall College. Actually, I am the dean of Marshall College, and I'm still developing sort of a history and a tradition and all the things that go along with having a wonderful university. If you want to enroll, just let me know. I can probably pull some strings and get you in.
It was the first time I had come to set. You know, you're hearing all, what's it going to be like when you step in front of the indie cameras? And I think it did something for me where me and the stunties really got close. We bonded on that trip when we were out of town, all the stunt guys and girls. And then the month and a half of training that we had before we went into the actual execution, all the stuff we'd been preparing for. And so it's just our boys in the front, right?
Our boys in the front. We started off on a smaller bike, and we just done a couple of days on this smaller bike. Yes, he's fine. And then we put him on the Harley Davidson, which is 600 pound. It's a very heavy bike, so even if you get off balance, genuinely you're going to the floor because it is just so heavy. So we had like 6 weeks where we was like with him every day, and it was just basically putting through the paces of each scene that we knew was coming up on the bike chase to get him to do as much as possible.
This is crazy! Somebody's gonna get hurt!
The bike was tough, only because when you have somebody moving on the back of a bike, it's very different than just having somebody hold you on a bike. But we're shooting a movie and Harrison has to animate his character. And we're on a bike through a lot of it. So a lot of it is the movement. All that stuff was pretty tough.
We shot in Hawaii, on the North Shore of the Big Island, doubling for the jungles of Peru.
Isn't it funnier if she says get down and she goes down and we all get down and we cover her?
Let's try that. Let me see what that feels like.
Get down! Get down!
Well, that's good. That's good. That's nice. That's funny. That's funny.
I had heard rumors that this film was in the works for years and years and years. So somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought, wouldn't it be great if they were going to do a fourth one? And wouldn't it be fantastic if they brought my character back into it? But I can't say that I really, believed that that was going to happen. So I'm just, actually I was at my studio one day and the telephone rings and I pick it up and I hear somebody on the phone going, "I've got Steven Spielberg on the line for you." And he said, "I guess you know why I'm calling." And I said, "No, I don't." And he said, "What, haven't you been watching television? Haven't you been reading the papers?" And I said, "No." And he said, "We've just announced we're making the next one and your character, you're gonna be in it. We really want you to be in it." And I had sort of imagined maybe it would be a wonderful little cameo or something, but he told me how, what a major role he wanted my character and me to play in the film. And when I read the script, honestly, I was just like very, very moved by it, by, what they had done with the character and the wonderful kind of repartee between them as they sort of mend fences and sort of realize that they still love each other. And yeah, I just thought it was beautiful.
Honey, you gotta stop. We're gonna go off the cliff.
That's the idea.
Bad idea. Give me the wheel.
Trust me.
Be back.
We're back from Hilo and we're here in LA and we're about to start our soundstage shooting. We've finished all the location shooting and I'm about to take off now to get that started.
So now we're shooting here on the stages in not so sunny Southern California. Actually, it's kind of unusual because we're not just at one studio, we're at 4.
We've got about 3,000 boxes here, but that doesn't include the boxes that we have, which are boxes grouped together. So actually built and designed as one huge group of boxes mounted on wheels, which means that we can move sets and set up different scenes for Stephen very quickly. And this is a huge moment. Really what's happening behind me here is this wall of boxes, which is just a couple of layers thick, is going to be smashed away as a vehicle reveals itself. Of course, Indy's driving the vehicle. He's created absolute havoc in this space by this point in the chase. And so we're really prepping this for that stunt.
So once we had the vehicle where it would do what we wanted it to do, we set up breakaway crates and we put some large air cannons behind it. Most of the air cannons we use are in a 30-40 gallon range. And what we did is we had two 500 gallon air cannons that are really large. So as the vehicle hit the crates, we pushed the button on both air cannons and released all the compressed air, which blew the crates apart, blew the set dressing in the air, and the Jeep comes through and Harrison's sitting there, then Harrison drives off.
I thought I just saw something! Are you jumping at shadows?
I love being on a physical set. And Guy Dias has given us extraordinary sets, the like of which I have, in 40 years of doing this, I have never seen. The detail, the interest that those sets have is absolutely blows my mind.
3, 2, 1, action!
That's great. Play that one back, please.
Stephen knows exactly what he wants, and he and Harrison know this genre like the backs of their hands. So, you know, he really does have a nose for when things are going too far, or also when you're not pushing it far enough.
That maker only sketched in a few lines.
Stay back! Stay back! Harrison and I have both fallen into quicksand, and Shia's character, Mutt, goes off in search of something to try to pull us out of the quicksand.
Stay there. I'll go get something to pull you out, all right?
And of course, being that we're in the jungle, the only thing that he can come up with, I guess there were no vines available. The only thing he can come up with is a 13-foot snake.
And this is the snake. This is a Papuan olive python, and this is the first time she's been on camera. I've had her about 5 years. She's 13 feet long, and it just keeps on coming.
What's he doing in that jar?
This is where he travels in.
It's a snake. It's not a rabbit. It's
Come
not
on.
a jump.
Oh, hell no.
Just come out,
I'm not a big snake fan at all. I'm a dog person, you know. I don't mess with the rest of them.
And he's making some hissy noises. That's
See,
just
what's
him.
that about?
Just breathing.
All right.
Support him there.
He's a really sweet snake, actually. He was really a friendly snake. I mean, I don't know much about snakes, but the snake trainer told me he was very friendly.
He likes you a lot.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, this is getting tighter up here on the arm here. I'm about done with this.
Yeah. She's very good-natured. Like most pythons, she's got a lot of teeth, and she kills by constriction. And she's a fantastic tree climber. And she's also cannibalistic. She eats other snakes. So you keep all your pet snakes away from this one. Popping them in there. All right, okay?
Yeah.
Keep doing this stuff.
That's acting.
And then
I certainly have a respect for and an aversion for poisonous snakes, but, you know, I've never been afraid of snakes.
Grab the snake! Stop calling it that! What do you want me to call it? It's a snake! Say rope! What?
Cut! It's a monkey. Great. One more time, right away. Here we go. Well, you know, Akator is a place we made up. There is no such place as Akator. But there is such a place as El Dorado, the city that Cortez, you know, was searching for, a city of gold. So we kind of loosely took that piece of history and mythology, if you will, and combined it in a fictitious way with another place that would be the lure to bring adventure seekers to the scary lower depths of a rainforest in order to find a lost city.
This tunnel, which has these wonderful images on, leads to an enormous circular rotunda in which our main characters get attacked by the locals of this area. And they basically break out of the columns that surround the space and attack our characters as they make their way through the tunnels. But those panels themselves have all been made as very fragile breakaways, so we have to carry those things around very carefully because there's approximately 14 hours worth of work that's gone into each one of these panels, and one false move and they could break. So it's a very, very nerve-wracking time, but they'll be shooting that scene this afternoon.
Go, 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 run!
Warriors, go!
The natives will be chasing Indy and his group out and down the stairs and across a colonnade here. Once that's been completed, we'll remove that series of entrances from the top of this set, and it will begin a redress and become the top of the temple with the spiral staircase. At that point, the actors now will run in reverse through the colonnade and up the stairs. So it's kind of a bit of a jigsaw puzzle in terms of the scheduling, but we've made this enormous structure work for us in many different ways. And then as you can see, there's an enormous hole in the middle of the set here. You can probably make out these 4 doors. They're all going to be closed in on a sort of an obelisk structure, which will probably stretch a further 35 feet in the air from here, making this certainly one of the tallest sets I've ever worked on.
And cut, good.
The other day we shot a door that we were able to open through a combination of our ingenuity and the psychic powers of the crystal skull. But the door was one of the most amazing things I've seen.
Watching door.
A stone arrow descended to 2 cylinders and pushed them apart to where they rolled off the edge, and 2 giant arms came down like this, and the door began to open in sections. And it is incredible.
One, two, three.
I've never been a fan of little green men, but this is an intriguing new proposition about an extraterrestrial visit to an ancient culture.
No more forever waiting. Well, this set has taken an extremely long time simply because of the remarkable level of detail that the sculptors have given us. The little tiles, sort of hieroglyphs, each one of those actually symbolized a piece of a story. And I believe there are about 4,000 of those tiles in this set. And one of the sort of tongue-in-cheek things that we did was we actually made a couple of tiles, one of E.T. and the other of R2-D2 and C-3PO, really as part of a tradition in these Indiana Jones films. I think Norman Reynolds and his team had put in Raiders of the Lost Ark some little images of R2-D2 and C-3PO in the famous snake pit that everybody loves, that famous scene. So I kind of felt I had to do something similar, just to keep that tradition going, you know?
Mark!
There are 3 more days to go, and then we've done the movie. It's been a great trip, and my first job as assist director was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and that's when I first got my union card as an AD in England, working for David Tomlin, who was one of the great ADs, and now I find myself, you know, as the first AD on Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So for me, it's a very emotional kind of feelings and, you know, fulfillment of my career to be working on this movie with Stephen.
That's fine. Actually, perfect. That's the word to look him up. Thank you.
I think the climax of the movie was an amazing adventure for us to put together. It was really a sequence that involved so many elements and so many sets and so many people and so many different places. That's really one of the biggest, if not the biggest, sequence I've ever been involved in.
I'm certain that we kiss at one point in the story, in scenes that we have not yet shot.
It's a secret. It's a secret.
Really? There's a big surprise at the end of the movie? Oh, that'll be exciting.
Congratulations. You may kiss your bride.
The wedding is in spring. The beginning of the movie, we're in fall colors, we're in fall garments. And the wedding is in spring, so it's much lighter palette. And Marion wears a really great wedding suit that we built for her, and she looks fantastic in it.
I thought that was a great end. Didn't you think that was great? And the little hat deal that they did, and Harrison, you know, puts it on his head. That's what makes movies. That's what makes really good movies.
It was the last day for a lot of the actors and a lot of the crew, and so we had our traditional last day toast right there on the set.
I just want to thank everybody for working so hard to make such a good picture, and I just have nothing but admiration for all of you. It was a long but not a lonely road. You're a great crew. Everybody did an amazing job, and this is your movie, not just mine, not just Harrison's or Karen's or Jaya's or Jim's or John's or any of this. This is your movie too. You brought back the 4th Indiana Jones. Thank you for that.
Stephen really wanted this movie to be a surprise for the audience when they got to the movie theater. So it had to be kind of a secret. We had to do everything very carefully so the surprises didn't get out. So we had to name it another name, and Stephen chose the name Genre. So we went around the whole time being called Genre, not Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. This is sunrise on the first morning in New Mexico. Good morning, Stephen. How you feeling on our first day?
I haven't quit the movie yet, but I may quit before the end of the day. I'll get a younger, brighter director to come over and take over.
It's a fine replacement, right?
Here we are in Santa Fe, and here we go, caravanning our way to start shooting Indiana Jones 4.
So here we are again, 18 years later. How time flies. No one's changed. We all look the same. But anyway, I'm really happy to be back on Indiana Jones. And, oh, I can't say the title. Okay. I just want to say, you know, break a leg, have a good shoot, do your best work. And here's looking at you kids. Once the production began, it was like I had just finished the last film 3 years ago, and we were typically on to the fourth adventure. It just like no time had passed at all.
3, 2, 1, moving out. Move out, guys, moving out.
The very first day of a principal photography consists of introducing not necessarily the main character, but just introducing the time period, which is, you know, we've got this group of teenagers riding a roadster, 1957 roadster, and it's all very colorful, and the wind is blowing their hair, they're dressed in a very colorful costumes, and they encounter this convoy of military trucks driving down the country road, and we realize that there's a bit of a tension between the teenagers and the soldiers. So you're beginning to create a little bit of a conflict and a little bit of suspense.
Very good, we got it. Thank you. Print that one.
Good, and that's a cut.
Very
We got
good.
it.
Really amazing rock formation right next to the road.
It was very exciting to be on a location that was extremely visual. We shot in Santa Fe, very close to the Ghost Ranch. Ghost Ranch is where Georgia O'Keeffe lived and created. So obviously the scenery, the environment, the landscape is really beautiful. Very much like a Western. And we wanted to open the movie with that kind of a iconic American landscape.
So we got to the location and we realized that the road, which is an old highway that's been abandoned, just wasn't high enough quality to allow us to get the work done. It was all potholed. And so we basically paved 1 mile of an old highway.
Well, you also see the danger of it.
Oh, that's fine. Good job, everybody.
Okay, first day. Ahead of schedule.
That's not a good change.
Under budget. 1 day down, 36 to go. That's for Hollywood.
That is too much pressure on me.
No. They say, hey, I can do it 34.
Dragged a bit. He's taken out of here like this, and then he's thrown down so he's near the hat.
Right.
Well, you know, when our story begins, we find Indiana Jones in the trunk of a car. And that was George's idea. George said, you know, I'd love to introduce Harrison this time playing Indy in the trunk of a car. And I said, that's fine by me.
I thought it would be nice to have him trapped in the back of a car with another guy. In a really desperate situation that we've grown to love with Indiana Jones. And it's, you know, a new step for introducing him. I thought after all these years it would be fun to do that and to do the unexpected.
I wouldn't exactly call it the romantic entrance that Harrison was given in the first movie. Or in the second movie when he came downstairs looking like Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca in the white tux. Or even in the third movie, which had a very good introduction, played by River Phoenix, where we got to see what Indiana Jones was like as a kid and how he became Indiana Jones. But we thought we would give him an ignoble entrance in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and pull him out of a trunk.
And action, guys.
Good.
Steven had a really beautiful idea of reintroducing Harrison through means of creating shadow of the hat, which is a very iconic item of his wardrobe, which is really very much of a Steven Spielberg way of reintroducing or introducing characters. It's funny, it's suspenseful, but also it's straight to the point.
Anywhere.
And action.
ребята, давайте! Быстрее, быстрее, быстрее! Скорей!
Russians.
And cut. Good. He'll turn to you and he'll say Russians.
When I first realised that I was actually in an Indiana Jones film, it was in New Mexico, when they throw Indy to the floor and then the camera goes onto the hat, the hand comes in, it picks it up, and you see the hat go onto his head, but it's the shadow on the car. So the shadow puts the hat on, and then Indiana Jones turns to the camera and goes, Russians. And I go, hey, whoa, you're in an Indiana Jones movie, you know, and that is the spirit of it.
Russians. This ain't gonna be easy. Not as easy as it used to be. We've been through worse.
Well, Ray Winstone was a great character. David kept it a lot of work on the script on just Ray's character, and we made it a little more complex. He may be the most complicated supporting character we've ever had in one of these pictures.
1957, a lot of the popular literature was about spies, betrayals, sneaking around, and the Cold War, and we wanted to keep that in mind. So the fun part about Mac is you never quite know whether to believe him or not.
He's a double agent, but he's a double agent who is forgotten. He's a double agent who don't know who he's working for. I kind of think when he's with the Russians, he thinks he's working for the Americans, and when he's with the Americans, he thinks he's working for the Russians. He don't know anymore, but he knows Indy's his mate.
Hey, Mark.
We needed to get a really good villain, and we made the choice to go with a woman. And then once we did that, then it was a matter of who would be the very best person to create a really strong villainous character.
When Kate read the script, she immediately knew what Spalko should look like, and so that was the character.
I had a look at yearbooks of people's high school photos in the 50s, and I found a couple of pictures, one of a Russian girl and one of an American girl with an incredibly short fringe, and I just thought that really emphasized the eyes, so that's in the end what we went with.
Spalko was inspired by Marlene Dietrich, just somebody with a lot of charisma and a certain amount of edginess and toughness to her, and just thought it would be appropriate for her to be in pants the whole movie.
I'd never actually met Harrison before the first day of shooting, and so it seemed perfectly right that the first time I should meet him, he would be in costume.
Director friends of mine who have worked with her said, don't be surprised if she disappears into this character, and they were absolutely right. The minute I would say action, bang, she was Irina.
We will do this old-fashioned way. You will tell us. You will help us find what we seek.
Готово, товарищ полковник.
Давай!
And cut, next shot, thank you.
One of the interesting things is there's a wonderful shot taken up above the lights there where we'll actually be looking down, and as we have a huge number 51 painted on the back of the door, giving a nice little wink and a nudge to the audience, telling them where we are.
The object we seek, rectangular storage container, dimensions 2 meters by 1/2 meters by 66 centimeters. Contents of box, mummified remains.
Makes you think I got any idea which box you're talking about?
We've built about 250 boxes, and contrary to what people might believe, it's not just simply putting boxes together. We had to age them down as though these boxes have been here for 20 or 30 years. The stencils we've actually created on the boxes are matches for the stencils in the original film, so I'm hoping fans will pick up on that level of detail.
Mark. Get out, focus. 16. Go ahead. Send him. Action, action, action. Perfect, cut. Good job, everybody. Good job. Good day, everybody.
Today's call was 3 a.m. We're out here in the dark, and now we're getting a sunrise shot. A beautiful sky, and Indy just coming over the hill here to see what we're calling Doomtown. Looks like we've got an uninvited guest on the set today. A rattler. That's not one of ours, is it? Where'd you find him?
Here.
By the trucks.
Here we go, guys. Stand by to shoot now. Stand by. Zero, lift it up, please. And here we go. Let's roll sound, please. Camera come around. Look back. And look back again. And cut. Harrison.
This is the scene, of course, where Indiana Jones is chased by the Russians and finds this quaint little American town in the middle of absolutely nowhere with perfect lawns, everything looks absolutely perfect. So he charges into one of the houses, calling out for help. And as he enters this house and moves through, he discovers, of course, that this is actually a staged town. So it's a very interesting, unique sort of set to do. The only people here, of course, are actually dummies. So he gets quite a shock.
We had to provide all of the mannequins for Doomtown. And so we had to come up with 50s looking mannequins, because they're very specific back then, their faces, their hairstyle. And we found a number of companies that still had some vintage mannequins, and one company in particular that sort of specialized in that.
Off to the side here, you'll see we've got some period vehicles. They're all going to be brought in and put into the various driveways here. And actually this will become quite a busy street in a really sort of weird fashion. I think the fact that it is actually supposed to look a little theatrical, it is actually supposed to be a heightened reality. Everything is a very bright color here, set against this beautiful blue sky, and the sort of weather we get out here only makes it even better, more effective.
Sir, wait! Don't wait for me!
Indiana Jones finds himself stumbling into the middle of a bomb test, which he survives in typical fashion by seeking shelter in a lead-lined refrigerator. And it goes on from there.
When he lands and comes out of the fridge, it had to be this charred, horrible, distressed piece of metal.
Action!
Thank you. Okay. Some other time.
How about the day after tomorrow?
Oh, okay.
Crew, everybody local and foreign, and those who are not going on with us, thanks for helping us make the picture here, and those who are, thank you for helping us make the picture here. We'll see you in New Haven. Thank you very much. You guys worked really hard. Long hours, hot conditions. Thank you. That'll be nice because we'll be able to be back here with all this, and we'll see them arguing out the door.
As tradition dictates, we find Dr. Jones teaching a class in archaeology, and along comes the dean of the school, sadly not Marcus Brody, who has passed on, but the new dean, who interrupts the class the same way Marcus Brody used to always stand there right by the door waiting for the class to end, and pulls Indy out and takes him into the hallway and basically tells him that he's been fired from the university.
What?
Cut! Print! Beautiful! We got it.
Jim Broadbent, I'm such a fan of Jim Broadbent. He's a great actor, and I was always just wanting to work with him. I've just always had an appetite to work with Jim. And I also needed somebody to be able to step into the shoes of Marcus Brody, someone with a soulfulness, but a sense of comic timing. But Jim brings very sad, heavy news that the government has begun an investigation into Indiana Jones's loyalty in this very paranoid period of McCarthyism.
My first bit of filming was at Yale, which is wonderful because I'd never been there, and just being there, it sets the whole tone for the character, for the relationships. I mean, it's all there.
We're shooting here at Yale University. It's kind of special to me because 25 years ago or so, we decided to call the college that Indiana Jones teaches at Marshall College. We're not real sure why it's called Marshall College. Actually, I am the dean of Marshall College, and I'm still developing sort of a history and a tradition and all the things that go along with having a wonderful university. If you want to enroll, just let me know. I can probably pull some strings and get you in.
We've had 2 scenes in classrooms just like this one, exactly, with kids like you. Except we shot all those movies in London.
So they were really British kids, not American kids. This is the first American representation of an American college of the whole series.
The thing that Yale gave us is a fantastic downtown area immediately adjacent to the university. So we could conduct the chase from the university to the streets, to the university to the streets, back and forth relatively easily. And the other good thing is that there were really no major offensive buildings on that main street.
When trying to be accurate to the way the costumes and the hair and the makeup should look, I would rather use Life magazine, which I did, because that's the truth of the 50s.
We had set up a shop beforehand in New Haven to do fittings for all the background, and so when we got there it was very well organized and put together, and so now everybody comes in on the day of, and everything's in a nice little compact closet, so every day it's just a lot easier for us to get up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and get all of these extras dressed and looking quite well for the shots those days.
But it was really fun. We got to, pick and choose a lot of vintage bicycles, all of their eyewear, their books. We spent a lot of time and care trying to develop their binders and their notebooks and age them properly and try and give them their own specific look.
Mutt was definitely inspired by Marlon Brando in The Wild One. What we did was we got real vintage jackets. We must have tried 20 on them, and we found the one that we liked to fit the best. And then we recreated it. We knew we had to make about 30 of them, and to age one of them was taking way too long. So we tried a technique, which was to wash the leather before we even made the jacket, and it worked really well.
It was the first time I had come to set. You're hearing all, what's it gonna be like when you step in front of the indie cameras? And I think it did something for me where me and the stunties really got close. We bonded on that trip when we were out of town, all the stunt guys and girls. And then the month and a half of training that we had before we went into the actual execution, all the stuff we'd been preparing for.
And so it's just our boys in the front, right?
I have boys in the front. Well, I knew Gary Powell because he was one of my best stuntmen on Saving Private Ryan. So I spent a long time with Gary, blowing him up every couple of days. He'd go flying into the air, and land on his head. And he would always get up for take 2. And I really liked him. But then when I saw Casino Royale, I simply said to Frank Marshall, my producer, Frank, get me the guy that did the stunts for Casino Royale. That guy was amazing. And it turned out to be Gary Powell, who I had already worked with.
Well, when I read the script and I see there was some bike chase in it, one of the guys I actually worked with in my team, Lee Morrison, is unbelievable on a motorbike, which was lucky he was coming here anyway, so he was my natural choice to double shire on the motorbike.
I showed Stephen a variety of motorcycles, and he really loved the bobber style motorcycle of the 50s, and so it evolved a little bit further.
We started off on a smaller bike with Shai, and we just done a couple of days on this smaller bike. Yes, he's fine. And then we put him on the Harley Davidson, which is 600 pound. It's a very heavy bike, so even if you get off balance, generally you're going to the floor because it is just so heavy. So we had like 6 weeks where we was like with him every day, and it was just basically putting through the paces of each scene that we knew was coming up on the bike chase to get him to do as much as possible.
This is crazy! Somebody's gonna get hurt!
The bike was tough, only because when you have somebody moving on the back of a bike, it's very different than just having somebody hold you on a bike. But we're shooting a movie and Harrison has to animate his character. And we're on a bike through a lot of it. So a lot of it is the movement. All that stuff was pretty tough.
What we do is we bring in what's called a second unit. And the second unit works in tandem with the first unit in complete collaboration, doing these shots sometimes right next door or on the next street from where the first unit is.
We've got 2 units running in New Haven. Stephen's obviously concentrating on the actors and the storytelling of it. Dan Bradley's obviously concentrating on the action and pretty much destroying New Haven as much as he can. So, I sort of go between the 2 units.
I also didn't know Dan Bradley, but Dan Bradley had shot second unit for Frank Marshall on the Bourne Identity series, and he had done some great second unit work. So we put Gary Powell together with Dan Bradley, and lo and behold, they had just worked together on Bourne Ultimatum. They're already good buds. So I got that team, which was really essential to make these stunts incredible.
A nice thing that happened during the chase, when actually the first and second units were working together in the plaza of the campus, was an homage to one of our most beloved characters, Marcus Brody. And so we have the chase ending up with a car crashing into the statue and the head of Marcus rolling into the lap of the bad guys.
That sort of worked really well, because credit to Dan Sudik, because he had to get the head to sort of snap off the top of the statue and bounce down and land on the windscreen. And it's like, I'm not too sure how he's going to do that, but you know, we crashed the car into it and it'd come off, bounce down the statue and smash straight into the windscreen. It's perfect.
The hall that was used for the chase was in fact a dining hall, and we had to remove all of the dining equipment and chairs and tables, and then redress that space with our sort of library reading hall set. We also protected the floor with our own special covering so that the motorbike didn't scrape any of the floor away and damage the floor.
We had a lot of extras in there, and we had a lot of stunt people in there, and so it was challenging getting the bike to lay down, which Lee did, which was great. The student whose chair we was crashing into was Tom Hanks' son, so it was like, no pressure, you know, look after him, so, you know, but it was all good.
Excuse me, Dr. Jones. I've got a quick question about Hargrove's normative culture models.
Read Vergord Child on diffusionism. He spent most of his life in the field. You want to be a good archaeologist? You gotta get out of the library! Hey, Mark. Back for action.
This is a train museum up in Essex, Connecticut, and the great thing is that they actually keep them so they're running. You don't find that very often.
It's a station that's used commercially for train tours, and they were very cooperative. We put a train together with their assistants, and we shot there for a day.
Dr. Jones?
You're gonna run out of platform, kid.
You're a friend of Dr. Oxley's, right?
Harold Oxley, the archaeologist?
Yeah.
What about him?
They're gonna kill him.
To have all this real equipment here with a real train that's still functioning, it's fantastic. It's just like going back in time.
We shot in Hawaii, on the north shore of the Big Island, doubling for the jungles of Peru.
Is it funnier if she says get down and she goes down and we all get down and we cover her?
Let's try that. Let me see what that feels like.
Get down! Get down!
Well, that's good. That's good. That's nice. That's funny. That's funny. Okay, Pasha, take your mark away from us one step. One step. Right there, that's good. I was fortunate to have great location managers, which is a very hard job. These are unsung heroes who have to secure the locations, often against great odds. And it was just a tremendous effort on everybody's part, and there were hundreds of people involved, moving this gigantic army from place to place.
One of the hardest things about finding locations on this film was that in 2007, to try and recreate 1957, and then to try to recreate 1957 primitive jungle, it's very hard to find primeval, untouched jungle. We had searched Mexico, Guatemala, Central America, Puerto Rico. We had looked all over for this. And then we decided to look again in Hawaii. It had early on been rejected, but we looked again in Hawaii.
We knew that for the jungle chase that we had to find a long road where we could run these vehicles. The location we found in Hawaii was fantastic. It's 16,000 acres, it's private, it's relatively easy to control, and it had a mile-long road through some incredible jungle. So the property owners granted us the ability to cut some roads adjacent to the main road so we could do our chase and run vehicles back and forth. And it was as close to being on a back lot as you could find.
Of course, being in a jungle, there are certain expectations from the jungle. You want the hot sun filtered through the branches. You like a little bit of a mist, so all that stuff we were able to do. Unfortunately, for me, I had to deal with the natural elements, and again, the natural elements are not always very friendly towards the cinematographer.
You know, it's incredibly hot, millions of mosquitoes everywhere, so you have to spray yourself down in the mornings with all this mosquito spray, which wasn't the nicest stuff.
You know, funny, I don't remember the weather being awful, but I have to say, usually women get the worst of, the clothing thing. I have to say, this being my costume, this sort of just shirt and vest, I'm the more appropriately dressed of the entire group. Poor John in the double-layered wool poncho, Harrison and Shia in leather jackets. So, I mean, they probably felt the heat more than I did.
Put your hand under his neck when you're driving. Can you steer like that? Yeah. Well, just lift him up. Is it okay if I can lift you up a little bit? That's great. That's what we got to do. Got to do that.
Steve wanted this specific fight on these moving vehicles, so we had to sort of choreograph it, and it's over 3 vehicles, so it's not like it's just 2 vehicles driving alongside each other. They're actually zigzagging through a jungle. There's trees going past and branches and all sorts of obstacles that are getting in their way. The road's uneven, so it's bumpy and all that. So it's it's a lot of choreography involved.
Come over, pull him round. Right. There. You know what I mean? And if you have to do anything, just give him a up and then go into it.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, pull up, please.
It was tricky because, we've purpose-built these vehicles for us to do the fight on. The ground, it was incredibly bumpy over there, so we had to think of a way that we could have the stunt doubles or the actor and actress on there, everyone in there, in a safe way. So, we played with different ideas and all that, and, we use wires quite a bit there just to hold them to the vehicles, but you have to be able to have them to have free movement around the vehicle to make sure that they can obviously choreograph the fight. They can't just be sort of tethered off in one place, otherwise it just wouldn't look any good, So it was a hard job to get around, but everyone did a really good job with it.
That's that crank. Yeah? Oh no, yeah. Oh, that one.
I mean, if you're going to do Indiana Jones, you've got to be prepared to be physical, I think, And it's great because, when you get to a certain age, you always think you're not going to do those type of movies anymore. And probably you get to a certain age, that's when you start doing them, I don't know. But that's been fun.
All right.
Shooting the first half of this was all physical. First half of the whole movie was physical. It wasn't a lot of character stuff till we got home, which was great. It's like shooting 2 different movies, at least from my perspective. It's hard to maintain character in a sword fight. You can't, and you're supposed to, but it's a whole different shooting style even for Steven, where he only wants to do those fights 2 or 3 times.
Action. I think it's better to use the first 6 years all the way over and let it fall off.
You've got to be ready for anything because Steven does change things up in the moment. It's a great way to work actually because it means that everything you do is really fueled by adrenaline. Focused adrenaline, you hope.
We're back from Hilo and we're here in LA, and we're about to start our soundstage shooting. We've finished all the location shooting and I'm about to take off now to get that started. So now we're shooting here on the stages in not so sunny Southern California. Actually, it's kind of unusual because we're not just at one studio, we're at 4.
I think the beginning of all these movies is like the end of most conventional action movies. We take the climax of an ordinary action movie, we say, well, let's just take that and let's put that on the beginning of our picture, even before the first act begins, as if the audience it came in late and is just watching the end of Indiana Jones 3.5 and before Indiana Jones 4 starts. The difference, I think, in 4 is we establish a couple of characters, so we take our time in establishing them at the very beginning, but right after that it moves into that kind of 6th gear.
Hey. It starts with some Russians trying to steal some top secret information from Area 51, and it gets into a giant action set piece.
Don't go back that far.
Action.
Great. Give me a 40 and a big one. 3, 2, 1, action!
In the 18 years that have passed, there have been great advances in both capacity and safety in the area of physical action stunts. One of the most significant advances has been in using flying wires, in assuring the safety of somebody like me during some really demanding physical stunts.
You know, safety devices, harnesses, and wires that we digitally removed later on allowed Harrison to do some death-defying stunts, but always keeping him safe. So physically, in terms of, I guess, if Harrison had an odometer, there would be more mileage on Crystal Skull than probably Raiders of the Lost Ark.
We've got about 3,000 boxes here, but that doesn't include the boxes that we have, which are boxes grouped together. So actually built and designed as one huge group of boxes mounted on wheels, which means that we can move sets and set up different scenes for Stephen very quickly. And this is a huge moment. Really what's happening behind me here is this wall of boxes, which is just a couple of layers thick, is going to be smashed away as a vehicle reveals itself. Of course, Indy's driving the vehicle. He's created absolute havoc in this space by this point in the chase. And so we're really prepping this for that stunt.
So once we had the vehicle where it would do what we wanted it to do, we set up breakaway crates and we put some large air cannons behind it. Most of the air cannons we use are in a 30-40 gallon range. And what we did is we had 2 500-gallon air cannons that are really large. So as the vehicle hit the crates, we pushed the button on both air cannons and released all the compressed air, which blew the crates apart, blew the set dressing in the air, and the Jeep comes through and Harrison's sitting there, then Harrison drives off.
This is a fictional space that is below Area 51. So really the whole place is based on fantasy. We've used a lot of classic sort of architectural shapes that you would expect to see underground, but essentially it is a sort of a utilitarian space. It's not supposed to be a glamorous space.
Set and action!
Indy and Dovchenko start a big fight in there. They pretty much smash up the control room and you end up on this rocket sleeve.
Before the movie, Steven told me this character is very strong and, you know, it's a lot of physical activities. So When we talked before the movie, he said, well, I think you can handle. I said, of course I can handle what he told. Well, and actually I am handling, you know, pretty good, what I think.
Debbie Zane, the casting director, brought Igor in, and I found out that Igor was a high-wire aerialist with Cirque du Soleil out of Las Vegas. He's a catcher. He'd be upside down on the trapeze catching people that were spinning in the air with their hands out. Please catch me, Igor. So I caught Igor this time and gave him the part, and he was a great villain. Now watch this. Now watch it. We pan to Harrison. We whip the Harrison, he backs up.
He's backing up as he
Yeah,
does
can
the
you
chain.
come closer? Now watch this. So he does the chain, we back up, Harrison backs up, and then can somebody, another person, can I see the chain land right there, right between his legs?
And action!
Harrison's been doing a great job. I mean, he's been physically fit, and he is doing most of his own stunts. So, you know, he's not completely crazy, but at the same time, almost all of it he's doing himself, and I'm just glad I'm not doing it.
And action!
Harrison is a really tough cookie, honestly. You know, I'm not surprised anymore, but I was in the beginning, how he can handle it and how he doing it, and you know, all those fights, you know, he takes so well. He goes, what are you doing? Igor, you punch like a girl, go ahead. So I deliver, trust me, I deliver. Really, I was there, but he's tough.
Well, we weren't punching each other for real. But the film's very physical. The fights are really well choreographed, really, I think, interesting on a character level as well.
Set it for halfway. 3, 2, 1, action! Light and blood!
Well, Dan Sudik built the rocket sled. It does, you know, fire off down the track pretty quick. You know, but again, it's incredibly safe, but it looks dangerous, you know, which is the best way to do it, you know.
Today, we find ourselves at Dr. Jones's house here on stage 29 at Universal Studios.
And action.
Where will you go?
An overnight to London for a start.
To begin with, conceptually, we wanted to choose an interior that was different to the first film. We felt that Harrison's character has moved on, obviously, from the first film, but we also wanted to hint at the design from the original films. So in a sense, the layout of this house is very similar to the first film. And the position of the fireplace, the piano, all those elements are as they were in the first films. It's just that the actual nature of the decor, the color, has all changed and been updated. Larry Diaz, of course, is a brilliant set decorator, and he's, I think, very successfully created an array of artifacts that Indy would have collected over the years. And we really wanted to tell the story of the adventures that perhaps had happened between this film and the last three films. So there are a lot of things in here, pictures of him and his close friends, all tying into the first three films. It'll be nostalgic, it'll remind them of those first films, so we're all extremely excited about it.
I never should have doubted you, my friend.
No. You have reason to question your friends these days.
And cut. That was the best one. Cut, print. And action!
So she could bring it to me and I could translate. Why? You on, Clarence?
Very good timing. One more time.
Today we're here at Paramount Studios. We've got a lot of beautiful period cars here and motorcycles, and we're shooting a diner. So we've created an authentic diner behind. This is where Mutt and Indy uncover the adventure that they're about to partake in. This diner is called Arnie's, which we've named after Stephen's father. So that was a nice little touch.
Hit him, Joe Collins. Hit him hard. Now go ahead. Over his shoulder.
Shia was the one character that I would say that they wanted an extremely specific look. And I think because his character represents the youth of America then and today, they wanted him to be hip and a bit of a bad boy. And so we sort of went with a sort of greaser look, pompadourish. And, you know, it takes a bit of work to recreate that.
You know, for me, the 50s was emblematic of music, of the very beginning of rock and roll. You know, bright young faces that Norman Rockwell loved to paint. And I wanted to evoke that era that I have really strong and fond memories of.
Get that greaser!
Good. Got him. One more time. Straight, stand by, and action.
Get that greaser! Get right on!
That's a really good take. Cut.
We're at Universal Studios and we're here on stage 27, and behind me is the exterior for the Churchill Cemetery. This is pretty heavily researched. We've looked at ancient excavations and burial chambers, and we've looked at ways in which people have been ceremoniously buried over the years in that part of the world. So a lot of what you're seeing behind is a recreation of that.
I thought I just saw something! Are you jumping at shadows?
I think some of the structures around the edge are a little more fanciful. The tree, for example, they're story points for Stephen. Our characters get attacked in this set, so we've had to create some sort of verticality at the sides to enable these bad guys to hide and jump out on our heroes.
I love being on a physical set. And Guy Dias has given us extraordinary sets, the like of which I have in 40 years of doing this, I have never seen. The detail, the interest that those sets have absolutely blows my mind.
Good, very good.
And he goes.
Go. 3, 2, 1, action! Go. Action!
In this sequence in the cemetery, we're looking for something really special to happen. And so we had two amazing stuntmen, Ernie Reyes Jr. and Nito Lariosa.
Like that jump?
Two amazing stuntmen who were able to choreograph this amazing fight sequence between Indy and Mutt and themselves.
It comes up right there and right in the lens like that. Bang, that's the frame.
That's human.
Harrison really, his genius is in routing out the details and paying considerably more attention than I would normally expect an actor to pay to little behavioral moments. There's a wonderful moment in Crystal Skull where Shia, playing Mutt, turns to him and says, "You're a teacher?"
You're a teacher?
And he says,
"Part-time."
Then he does a little smile after part-time. That's a detail. And that's something that a director doesn't tell an actor. Perhaps sometimes they do if they can think of it, but that's something that I didn't have to think of because those are the nuances that Harrison customarily adds to this character when he's playing Indiana Jones. I'm like this, Janusz. I'm more like a 50-50 like this. And then Harrison, and then we go, you got a knife, then we see the knife come out, we see the whole little thing there, and then we come around like this, and then we just do the whole cut.
This is the climactic scene in the Chichilla Cemetery, where Indian Mutt finally discover this amazing chamber filled with these very strange beings, all wrapped in this foil. There are 7 of them, and at the very end will be the most famous of all these Spanish conquistadors who was in search of El Dorado, you know, the city of gold, and he never found it.
It's him. It's Oriana himself.
Hey, Mark. There's these mummified-looking sarcophaguses that these conquistadors are in, and they were of a really interesting design. This sarcophagus was originally supposed to be a chrome finish. So the ones that we made and we were taking down to set were this chrome finish. And then I think when Steven saw them in the set, he changed his mind. And so a couple of days before we shot, we had to turn them all from these bright, shiny chrome sarcophagus to more of these mummy-wrapped, sort of, you know, an organic-looking sarcophagus. And what we ended up doing for those is we sculpted the outside, made molds on those, and then pulled those out of fiberglass. But then they had to also be rigged so that Indy could cut through them, and they find these well-preserved conquistadors inside. So we life-casted one of the guys here of Spanish descent, used his face, and carved him down like he looked like he'd been dead in there for 500 years, but still preserved, who then will wither right before our eyes because as the air gets to him, it causes him to decompose.
Hold this.
Very good. You're saying perhaps I can find, take a few steps here, perhaps I can find a more, and just come back up.
Come back to the old mark?
Back maybe to the old mark. We'll see what that looks like.
This is the scene where Mutt and Indy are kidnapped and brought to the Russian military camp in the middle of the Amazon. And obviously we couldn't go down to the Amazon to shoot this. So we've converted this stage into a simulated part of the rainforest. We've used about 8 tons of mulch. We have about 1 ton of leaves and sticks that we've put over the top of that as our ground cover. And we've surrounded the camp with about 60 or 70 trees, full-size trees. And behind that, of course, we have a large backing, which are basically scenically painted trees. But under low light, you really get the impression that you're in the depths of a jungle.
Action.
Through eyes that last I saw in tears. Ox, listen to me, pal. Your name is Harold Oxley. You were born in Leeds, England. You and I went to school together at the University of Chicago. And you were never this interesting.
Well, I always thought that the character, Professor Oxley, who has sort of gone over the bend, I said to George, you know who this could be? This could be like that great character in Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island. It could be Ben Gunn, you know, the shipwrecked guy, you know, that has gone totally native with a scraggly beard, who runs around kind of like a feral beast in the jungle and doesn't have all his wits about him.
Hey, yes, that sounds something I could get into. As it turned out, it's obviously no 2 parts are exactly the same, and this isn't a man who was just left on his own for that long. This is a man who became possessed of the spirit of the Uga tribe. So he spends most of the film completely possessed and under the influence of this, so which comes out as a kind of not there or madness or whatever, you know.
To lay their just hands on that golden key that opens the palace of eternity. The palace of...
He's from Milton, he said it before. Why?
We're used to making people beautiful most of the time, or pretty, or young, or hip, or whatever. To make someone really look bad is a really difficult thing, because it goes against all your instincts.
Oxley's backstory was he's a professor. He's dressed much like Indiana Jones is when he's teaching in a 3-piece suit. And as he was there and as he became involved with the skull, he started to transform himself. He loses the jacket, he loses his vest, he still has his suspenders on, his pants are cut off, he gets a pair of Peruvian shoes, and then he buys, or maybe he steals, that Peruvian blanket.
He is the divining rod that will lead us to Akator. But we need someone to interpret him for us. His mind, it seems, is quite weak. Let's hope yours is stronger.
You know, there's a real family atmosphere that everybody is used to sort of being on, immediately on. So the focus on the set is, you know, fantastic. But there is a fluidity because all of a sudden he'll cut a page and introduce something else, or he'll say, I want you to say this in Russian. And thank goodness, you know, Igor and Pavel are on set because, you know, people say, how do you say get the bastards in Russian? And, you know, they'll throw it my way, which is great. So you just sort of go for it.
Why are you so mad at me?
How much time you got? Well, Dr. Jones, you will help us?
Quick!
A simple yes will do.
Oh, Marion, you had to go and get yourself kidnapped.
It's not like you did any better.
Same old, same old.
And cut. That's great. Play that one back, please.
Stephen knows exactly what he wants, and he and Harrison know this genre like the backs of their hands. So, you know, he really does have a nose for when things are going too far, or also when you're not pushing it far enough.
The map maker only sketched in a few lines.
Stay back! Stay back! Harrison and I have both fallen into quicksand, and Shia's character, Mutt, goes off in search of something to try to pull us out of the quicksand.
We built some large cylinders, you know, 30-inch diameter, 8 foot. And we opened up the stage floor, went underneath, and installed these mechanisms down in there. So what we would do is have the actors stand on the platforms, sand dressed all around them. As we slowly started lowering the platforms, the sand would backfill itself into the area, and it appeared as though they were sinking down through the sand.
Stop. Don't worry. Nothing to worry about unless there's a...
Void collapse.
All right. Stay there. I'll go get something to pull you out, all right?
And of course, being that we're in the jungle, the only thing that he can come up with, I guess there were no vines available. The only thing he can come up with is a 13-foot snake.
And this is the snake. This is a Papuan olive python, and this is the first time she's been on camera. I've had her about 5 years. She's 13 feet long, and it just keeps on coming.
What's he doing in that jar?
This is where he travels in.
It's a snake. It's not a rabbit. It's
Come
not
on.
a jar.
Oh, hell no.
Just come out.
I'm not a big snake fan at all. I'm a dog person, you know. I don't mess with the rest of them.
And he's making some hissy noises. That's
See,
just
what's
him.
that about?
Just breathing.
All right.
Supporting there.
He's a really sweet snake, actually. He was really a friendly snake. I mean, I don't know much about snakes, but the snake trainer told me he was very friendly.
He likes you a lot.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, this is getting tighter up here on the arm here. I'm about done with this.
Yeah. She's very good-natured. Like most pythons, she's got a lot of teeth, and she kills by constriction. And she's a fantastic tree climber. And she's also cannibalistic. She eats other snakes. So you keep all your pet snakes away from this one. Popping them in there. All right, sir. Okay? Yeah. Keep doing this stuff.
That's acting.
And then...
I certainly have a respect for and an aversion for poisonous snakes, but, you know, I've never been afraid of snakes.
Grab the snake! Stop calling it that! What do you want me to call it? It's a snake. Say rope! What?
Cut! It's a great, great. One more time, right away. Here we go. That's funny.
The funniest thing about that whole thing was like Steven's behind the camera and he wants you to hit a mark with the snake's head. It's a live snake. And so he puts like an X in the sand. Like, all right, Shia, we're gonna film, put the camera right here, he's behind the camera. Put the snake right here. And you're going, oh, okay, that shouldn't be too tough until you turn around and the snake is all over the place. You can't control the snake's head. It's a heavy snake, it's about 50 pounds, and you turn around and you're trying to throw the snake onto the mark, but the snake is retracting and he's all over the place. And then you get Steven going, no, Shia, not over here, right here on the X. And you're like, it's not a piece of wood, Steven. It's a snake. This is gonna be tough to get it there.
With a fast squeeze, it does an explosion. Slow squeeze, you get an ooze.
Let me see a slow squeeze.
Slow squeeze.
Oh, that's great. Let's mix it. Let's mix it.
Okay, you got it.
We have these very large fire ants that enter a big sequence in the movie, and I think those are going to be the probably one of the creepiest things.
An ant. squeeze it. Look down at your feet. And cut.
A couple of vehicles find themselves in a clearing, and the reason it's a clearing is this enormous ant colony has cleared the jungle in this area and turned it into essentially a wasteland, and our characters find themselves having a fight with Dovchenko right in the middle of this ant's nest.
Go! Get to the river!
Indy tends to get himself into trouble that sometimes is a little more than he can handle. And he always comes up against a formidable foe who he has to take on, usually in a mano-a-mano kind of fight. And certainly the anthill sequence, being there to see these two guys go at it day after day, swinging and punching, and it was pretty amazing.
I looked at and saw how beat up he got in the other movies, and so I always stayed within those parameters, because there's like an indie universe that Stevens created that we all kind of worked within. You know, like in other movies we'd go bloodier, or you'd tendency to get dirtier or more rumpled, and we always kind of stayed the fine indie line, you know?
3, 2, 1, action! And cut! Good.
And when he looks at you, here's what he looks at. Make eye contact with him. Harry, take one step toward him. Take one step toward him, and he just goes. That's great. That's great with the fist bump. That's great.
And Stevens also known for putting these little touches of humor into a lot of scenes in Indy, and certainly in this one, in the anthill sequence, the fact that the ants start to take his hat away, which is the iconic symbol of Indy, is pretty wonderful.
Well, you know, Akator is a place we made up. There is no such place as Akator. But there is such a place as El Dorado, the city that Cortez, was searching for, a city of gold. So we kind of loosely took that piece of history and mythology, if you will, and combined it in a fictitious way with another place that would be the lure to bring adventure seekers to the scary lower depths of a rainforest in order to find a lost city.
A large part of the movie takes place underground. So of course, again, you're dealing with certain logistics. How do you light a cave without any lights? And of course, they're carrying little torches and little flashlights, but that is not sufficient to create enough illumination to expose the film.
So how can I make that smaller?
The shadow? Just moving the light for a bit.
I understand.
The reason I like the water effect on the walls and on people's faces is because there's a movement. It constantly moves across face or constantly moves across the wall. It's constant light and shadows, and that's what I work with. I work with light and shadows.
Are they the same?
There were more. Look.
This tunnel, which has these wonderful images on, leads to an enormous circular rotunda in which our main characters get attacked by the locals of this area. And they basically break out of the columns that surround the space and attack our characters as they make their way through the tunnels. But those panels themselves have all been made as very fragile breakaways, so we have to carry those things around very carefully because there's approximately 14 hours worth of work that's gone into each one of these panels, and one false move and they could break. So it's a very, very nerve-wracking time, but they'll be shooting that scene this afternoon.
Go, run! Warriors, go!
The natives will be chasing Indy and his group out and down the stairs and across a colonnade here.
When you first read it, I did running down steps. It's all right, we'll run down some steps. of a sudden you get to these steps and they're all sort of jaggedy and sort of uneven and quite steep. So, you know, we rehearsed for that for a day or so.
Once that's been completed, we'll remove that series of entrances from the top of this set, and it will begin a redress and become the top of the temple with the spiral staircase. At that point, the actors now will run in reverse through the colonnade and up the stairs. So it's kind of a bit of a jigsaw puzzle in terms of the scheduling, but we've made this enormous structure work for us in many different ways. And then as you can see, there's an enormous hole in the middle of the set here. You can probably make out these 4 doors. They're all going to be closed in on a sort of an obelisk structure, which will probably stretch a further 35 feet in the air from here, making this certainly one of the tallest sets I've ever worked on.
And the theory of it is once you remove the plugs, the sand drains out and it drops a counterweight. When the counterweight drops, it allows these big arms to fold up and fall down. As the arms come down, that allows the floor to open up and reveals the staircase below.
1, 2, 3!
So that basically was a practical set, and if you think about the weights, I mean, we had arms that are 20, 30,000 pounds that you're lifting up to drop down in this hole with your actors there. It looked really good.
And cut, good!
I was so impressed with Dan Sudik's work when I hired him to do War of the Worlds that I asked him to do Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And Guy Dias had come up with a couple of interesting booby traps. Go! So Dan and Guy had to work as collaborators between physical effects and set design.
You know, we knew we needed 20,000 pounds of sand per take, so we tested a lot of different sands and products that look good and still would do what we're trying to do in the gag.
Harrison!
Listen! Hear that? It's not over!
Cut, very nice.
Here on this stage, we're dealing with a rather complicated set. It's actually broken into 2. It's the disappearing staircase set.
There's a circular staircase, and we find ourselves there as the steps are disappearing.
It was wild to be in it, and there behind Harrison, and running down the stairs, and things are retracting, and that was so indie.
2, 1, go!
The steps do retract in at quite a fast rate, so we've had to build quite a substantial rig on the top, which they're all on cables. They start running down, the steps start retracting.
So the idea is that Indy and his group have to run down the stairs before all the stairs completely retract. If they don't make it, they'll end up like the Spanish conquistadors behind me here in their heavy armor that were too heavy to run down the stairs fast enough, and end up spiked on these huge stone spikes.
When I said, that's a great idea, let's put that in the script, I had no idea what I was getting myself in for. The outskirts of the column have different sleeves of pure steel and a whole wire system of steel wire that has to pull these stone steps slowly into the wall.
The stairs were quite large. The stairs were 20-foot stairs, and I think they weighed about 3,000 pounds each. And all of those stairs were on tracks and cables and pistons, and they would all retract as one.
Go, 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 go! We've got cameras on cables moving up and down and around, following them, behind them, in front of them, above them, below them. So it is quite a challenging set, this one.
Hey, Mark.
It's scary, but there's a humor to it. Steven has a way of putting you in the middle of the fear and keeping the humor intact so that you don't lose the tone of Indiana Jones.
They're almost going to kiss, and then Shia comes and interrupts it.
Hold this!
You know, there's a wonderful comic constant trading off of everybody looking after everybody else.
That's hard to do. That's not an easy sell, to scare people but still have them in a humorous spirit. How do you do that? That's a magic that he knows how to do. I mean, that's Steven.
Take about 7 or 8 steps.
And then turn.
And then turn. If nobody moves, they're just staring at you. Nobody's moving. And you're standing there and you can go.
This way?
In our storyline, the idea is that our heroes make their way down the stairs and basically stand in awe of the incredible Aladdin's cave that they've found, which basically has artifacts from all the ancient civilizations. Greek, Roman, Egyptian, everything's here.
Artifacts from every era of early history.
You know, there's a lot of movement in the set.
This place is the mother lode.
I think what most people don't realize is that wherever the camera is, everything has to be moved out of the way of it. So like in a set like the antechamber, it was just moved over and over and over. And then every time the camera turns around and sees back, then you have to put it back the same way that it was. So it's a huge amount of juggling.
The other day we shot a door that we were able to open through a combination of our ingenuity and the psychic powers of the crystal skull. But the door was one of the most amazing things I've seen.
Watch the door.
A stone arrow descended into two cylinders and pushed them apart to where they rolled off the edge, and two giant arms came down like this, and the door began to open in sections. And it is incredible.
This is the heart of the temple. This is purely imagination at this point. What I've done is I've taken some artistic license to try and come up with a style which is something that obviously is ancient, but would work with a series of beings that are clearly from another world.
I've never been a fan of little green men, but this is an intriguing new proposition about an extraterrestrial visit to an ancient culture.
No more forever waiting.
Well, this set has taken an extremely long time simply because of the remarkable level of detail that the sculptors have given us. The little tiles, sort of hieroglyphs, each one of those actually symbolized a piece of a story. And I believe there are about 4,000 of those tiles in this set. And one of the sort of tongue-in-cheek things that we did was we actually made a couple of tiles, one of E.T. and the other of R2-D2 and C-3PO, really as part of a tradition in these Indiana Jones films. I think Norman Reynolds and his team had put in Raiders of the Lost Ark some little images of R2-D2 in the famous snake pit that everybody loves, that famous scene. So I kind of felt I had to do something similar just to keep that tradition going,
To see these things they have managed to come up with, and how engaging, how interesting it is visually. It's a great element in the film overall.
Scott. Action.
I've got a bad feeling about this.
These are always those kind of amazing things where this incredible climactic scene in the film is something that you're kind of acting without ever really knowing what it's going to look like.
What the hell is that? A portal! A pathway!
It's not like we want to go that way.
As the set is falling apart, of course, we couldn't destroy the set because it was just too complicated. So we shot a large portion of this particular scene on the blue screen with interactive lighting, where we had lights on special rigs that would allow the lights to spin and move in the circle. So all that was to create the sense of the world falling apart. The more interactive lighting I can introduce to the set, the easier it is for the visual effects guys to incorporate my lighting into what they design.
Come on!
Here we're looking at, just around this corner, a staircase that will become what we call the generator room. The design of this, as we'll see in the concept art, actually shows a series of stone turbine wheels all the way up on either side. And you'll see at the top right hand we have the one single wheel. So the idea for this set is that we will have a working single wheel, and that will be replicated and cloned by Pablo and his team at ILM all the way down the stairs. And Dan Zudik and his team will provide us with interactive water so that we can wet down these stairs and really make it look as though those wheels are there.
It would drop basically 10,000 gallons per minute of water down onto the wheels, and they actually spun by the water hitting them. You know, Steven wanted interactive mist, so we had to hang mister heads throughout the whole set and turn them on, so it's as if the whole set was raining and flooding all at once.
There are 3 more days to go, and then we've done the movie. It's been a great trip, and my first job as assistant director was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and that's when I first got my union card as an AD in England, working for David Tomlin, who was one of the great ADs, and now I find myself, you know, as the first AD on Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So for me, it's a very emotional kind of feelings and, you know, fulfillment of my career to be working on this movie with Steven.
That's fine. Okay, perfect. That's the word will come up. Thank you.
I think the climax of the movie was an amazing adventure for us to put together. It was really a sequence that involved so many elements and so many sets and so many people and so many different places. That's really one of the biggest, if not the biggest, sequence I've ever been involved in.
I'm certain that we kiss at one point in the story, in scenes that we have not yet shot.
It's a secret. It's a secret.
Really? There's a big surprise at the end of the movie? Oh, that'll be exciting.
I've never gotten married in a movie.
Never? Here we go.
Wedding virgins.
This should be great.
I kind of wanted to reunite him because I thought she was great. She was the spunkiest, and she was the one I sort of thought he should have married in the first place, and I think a lot of other people thought that too. So we finally came to her and having him reunited with her and marry her.
Henry Jones Jr. and Marion Ravenwood.
It was beautiful. When I got to the end of reading it, I actually had tears in my eyes. I was really touched by it. I was touched by it just in reading it. And then I was touched by it that they had decided to create this wonderful role for me in this film.
Congratulations. You may kiss your bride.
You know what I thought you were going to do? I thought you were going to whack him, sleeve whack him, and then just take him. I thought you were going to really take him. So we should do that. You were going there, you know? I think that's really nice.
The wedding is in spring. The beginning of the movie, we're in fall colors, we're in fall garments, and the wedding is in spring, so it's much lighter palette, and Marion wears a really great wedding suit that we built for her, and she looks fantastic in it. But it felt appropriate that she wouldn't be in a dress, that she would be in a wedding suit. She's a more mature woman. It's not her first marriage, so it seemed appropriate that she's in a wedding suit as opposed to a frilly wedding dress.
We had decided with the other designer that we were going to go into all pastels. And I found a Donegal tweed fabric, which was very good for the period, and it was a nice pastel shade. And I like blue and brown. I think it goes well. And made shirts that were pale blue with a little tan stripe in them. And then we did the bow tie, and it worked out very, very well. I thought that was a great end. Didn't you think that was great? And the little hat deal that they did, and Harrison, puts it on his head. That's what makes movies. That's what makes really good movies.
There's a lot of freedom involved in this, way more than I ever expected, which is scary to me. You find out that you're there for input also. To have freedom in something that's this massive is not like a reassuring thing. It scares you. This whole process is the most terrifying and electrifying experience of my life.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
With Steven, he's a different man, really, in many, many ways. I mean, in many ways, he's the same man, too. But, I saw the filmmaker when I worked with him the first time, and working with him now, I see the whole man. It's beautiful to watch him with his kids. and he just became a grandfather. And it's beautiful to watch the excitement that he feels.
I'll be seeing you. Yeah, I'll be seeing you.
I think, we've all grown up. We're all 25 years older. I mean, I wasn't married, nor did I have a child then either. So we've all become parents. We've all done a lot of other kinds of things with our lives. So it's particularly satisfying to come back together, I guess, with such a huge gap. So you're meeting the same person, but you're meeting a person who's really grown, and it's great.
The wonderful thing that happened was it was the last day for a lot of the actors and a lot of the crew. We were sizing down to just a small unit to go up to Fresno. So it was really the last day for many, many people. And so we had our traditional last day toast right there on the set.
I just want to thank everybody for working so hard to make such a good picture. And I just have nothing but admiration for all of you. It was a long but not a lonely road. You're a great crew. Everybody did an amazing job, and this is your movie, not just mine, not just Harrison's or Karen's or Jaya's or Jim's or John's or any of this. This is your movie too. You brought back the 4th Indiana Jones. Thank you for that.
Sean, go. Bicycle, go.
We found a series of airfields in Fresno, quite fortunately, that are a stone's throw from each other, where we can literally move from one airfield to the other, shooting not only Bradford as the sort of Connecticut airport where they leave, but also Mexico City, where of course they would have to change to then embark on a journey to Nazca. So we'll see 2 aircraft, a classic DC-3, and then a plane. Actually, at the moment, we're waiting for Harrison Ford himself to decide what that plane should be. He's kind of an aviation expert, has planes himself. I'm kind of happy that he's getting involved with it, actually, because he's got great taste.
Well, I was involved peripherally in the choices of the airplanes, which transport Indy and Mutt to the various places where our adventure takes place. The red line on the map that shows our progress. And I found that the airplane that they were planning on using seemed not to be the right one. And so I brought it up, and everyone was interested. I think we've sorted it out, and we got the right airplanes now.
That's cut, print, and that's a wrap. That's a wrap.
I guess that's it. It's over. We're finished. That's a wrap.
Very nice.
The Warriors. Well, I have to say that was Guy Diaz's wonderful artwork, and I was just able to execute his artwork by going to a prosthetics house and a prosthetics person by the name of Matthew Mungle. I gave him the designs, and he made encapsulated keloids for us, and by golly, it was hard work. We got a really fabulous team of 26 makeup artists together, who came in, and I had 2 makeup artists working on each warrior who came in and applied all the keloids and applied all the ears, and they did a mighty job, and they really looked fantastic, and I was very, very pleased. With the warriors, we started off very early in the morning. I mean, these people were such wonderful troopers, and of course so were the guys who were the warriors. I previously asked them to actually shave their bodies so they didn't have any hair. And that morning they came into the hair department and they had their heads shaved, and then they came to us, and the process started of lying them down.
Okay, so now put this on right there.
They started off by putting the chest emblems on, and then going to the rib area, and then on their backs and on their arms, and then on their heads. Because we actually had a test of this in pre-production, and Stephen signed off on it, Kenny Diaz and myself did the warrior together to show him what they would look like. We actually did a lot of shading on their faces to bring out their features around their eyes. We dirtied their bodies up because, of course, they would never be clean running around in the areas that they were. We, of course, colored their teeth. I actually sat up at night time mixing tinted makeup colors into spirit gum so that it could be put on their teeth, and then I went and got cake decorating colors and mixed those together so that we could stain their lips and the inside of their mouths so that that would last.
2, 3, 4.
It was very exhausting, it was very time consuming, but it was so worth it to go through what we went through and all these steps to get to them where they were.
Done, baby.
Steps, it's a done deal.
It was a very interesting process, but it had its steps, but it had to work that way. And then once these guys had been done this way, they had to go back and have their hair pieces on, and then they had to come back to makeup and have the keloids reapplied to their heads.
We had to not only shave all their heads, but then their hair pieces had to be glued on and secured. And then some of them had tattooed heads around the hair pieces as well. So to get them completely ready, it took about 5 to 6 hours between hair and makeup and wardrobe.
And that was with 2 people working on them at a time. So it was very, very, very hard work.
The mud guys were much easier to get ready because they were just basically being covered with this movie mud, and they had mohawks that were sort of pulled down and messy and caked with mud, so they were much easier.
The other warriors, who we call the Mud Warriors, which again was Guy's creation, it's just he gave us some fabulous soil samples and colors of the sets of which he was doing so that I would know which color spectrum I could go into to make up the mud, which of course was made out of non-toxic clay. So if you could have seen, I think myself in particular, with a cement mixer and choosing all these non-toxic clays and then mixing them together to getting the right color so that 30 people could be absolutely covered from top to toe.
And stop! And looking, and fear backing up. Now.
And I must admit, Mary Zofries was very wonderful, and her team. They came in with all these wonderful, what I would call ear bobs, nuts which had been cut in half, and we stuck those into prosthetic ears so that they had the look of these wonderful big pieces in their ears. I really think that everybody did such a magnificent job all around. They really did. I'm very, very proud of them.
I knew about the crystal skulls. There's more than one. The Mitchell Hedges skull being the most famous. It's impossible to date them. And the way they were made sort of defies the physical science because it's crystal, which is kind of carved against the grain, which in most instances would shatter and splinter the crystal. So inherently, the way these were manufactured is very mysterious, maybe even a little bit toward the paranormal. And there's a lot of legend about the skull, and that seemed to be perfect for Indiana Jones to go after to try to solve the mystery that he's been introduced to by the entrance of Mutt in our story.
The crystal skull has been an object of speculation for a long, long time. There are a number of crystal skulls in existence. The greatest mystery is how they were made.
Unbelievable.
Using today's methods to attempt to do such a thing, to carve a crystal skull out of a single piece, have proved to this point fruitless. Nobody's been able to do anything like that. So there's a great speculation about how this was done, what technologies were involved, who the makers of the crystal skull are.
The skull is supposed to have supernatural powers. A lot of people believe that aliens came here 5,000 years ago and helped begin civilization. And all the things that are in the movie, there is a belief system built around those, that people that swear by it. And so it's actually very plausible. It's very realistic in that way. That's one of the things I really love about it, is that it's rooted in real life.
Stan Winston, who has worked with Stephen many, many times, his team of guys here on the set have been just so professional and so brilliant. There's a wealth of knowledge and experience with those individuals that you really can't get anywhere else in the world, and having them on the team has been a real relief, particularly with our crystal skulls and crystal skeletons. They're exceptionally beautiful and functional and seem to possess all the character that Stephen wanted them to in his early descriptions. So I think they've done an amazing job.
No more forever waiting.
Start forward on flight.
It was neat to get the call to come be part of the team to work on Indiana Jones. And one of the main items that we had to come up with, and we had to come up with quickly because by the time we came on board it was getting ready to shoot soon, is the crystal skull and everything that goes with that.
John had to create a crystal skull that wasn't just a normal looking skull with all the normal proportions, but looked like something that perhaps was not of this earth. But it was important that the skull was very, very enticing for the audience. And the face needed to be not human, but also not alien. And it was a real balancing act. And I thought John did an amazing job creating this thing that everybody goes after.
Either way, it can be pulled out. We started by working with some of Guy's art department, drawing some production art. And then we actually took that, and there was another piece of artwork that got generated by ILM, which kind of showed the tone and texture of what the skull was to look like. But we actually sculpted it in the computer and did many different variations. And then our first meeting that we had with Stephen, Scott Patton and I, who's one of our key designers, we went down and showed Stephen all of the different skull designs, and he enjoyed seeing them in that kind of a presentation. We had different ones on a page, and then he kind of keyed in on a couple that he liked. Then we also had brought the program with us so that we opened it up, and then you can move around in the program and see the skeleton from all different angles. And then Stephen said, well, what if you didn't have a nose, and what if the eyes were, you know, a little different? And so then we did it right there on the fly with Stephen, and it was fun. We created it sort of right there on the spot, and then had it rapid prototyped out, and then started producing the skulls.
Wanted you to see before we install.
They're just great. They're going to dust them down, of course, right?
Sure. Sure. No, this isn't even, this was just in our shop.
From a technical standpoint, the crystal skull was tough because to make these actually out of glass or crystal, it was going to be an extremely lengthy process. It could take months to come up with the final product. So knew that was not going to be an alternative, and they'd be very fragile. So we ended up having to develop out a way to make them out of a water-clear urethane, which gave us a better turnaround time and gave more durability. So there was a lot of experimentation that had to go into making these skulls and making sure that they would turn out air bubble free and a certain thickness. And so from a technical standpoint, it was challenging but also exciting. They actually ended up being cast hollow. They're only about that thick,
They appear to be more solid because there's a little brain that was sculpted and created, also out of crystal, that goes inside of that. And then we ended up putting in a filling layer that gives it the faceted quality, which makes it seem like it's more dense than it is, but to keep it lightweight and controllable, they're actually a standard thickness, each one of them.
The New Mexico specimen gave us hope. Unlike the others we'd found, its skeleton was pure crystal.
There is also a smaller gray alien that we created for a couple of sequences. What the story is, which has become a legend, there's people that believe in it and people that don't believe in it, but there was supposed to be a crash of an alien spacecraft, and they pulled out the body of a small little gray alien, and it was taken back, and there was a secret autopsy done on it. So what we were trying to do is be faithful to those descriptions and also add our own twist to making it seem organic and real. And we incorporated the sort of withered, burned skin, and Stephen wanted it to have a bit of that forensic quality, like it was a corpse, and then it had been semi-poorly preserved because of the technology of the day, and then it's opened up later, and that's what you get to look at.
Should I carry it like that? And then when I get here, you turn it around like that. Exactly.
The aliens that come towards the finale of the movie are 9 foot tall, so they're very different than the little 4-foot gray alien that's from the Roswell sequence. These are much larger and very long, slender, sort of elegant, and yeah, they're giants, 9 foot tall.
The skeleton, we looked at all sorts of things. For example, bird bones, which are extremely lightweight and fragile and tend to take on a really sculptural sort of shape, a lot more than our bones, for example. So imagine a human but made of birds' bones.
Like the skull, we created them in the computer so that we could move, almost like a camera. You can move all the way around the sculpture and you can look at it from different angles. And once we adjusted those to how Stephen liked it, we once again rapid prototyped those out, cleaned up all of those individual bones, molded them all, and then went through a very similar process of the skulls in that they were made from the urethane, and once the molds were created, we had to make sure that they were bubble free, and then it was broken down into separate bones, not 206 like a human, but we grouped the feet together, we grouped the hands together, and then you'd have your femurs, and all the different bones were all done separately. So then they have to pin together. But they were done in multi-pieces for many reasons. You could focus on each bone and make sure it looked perfect, and then it became easier to cast it up, as separate bones than trying to cast this entire skeleton together. There's slight variations we did on each one to give each one a slight personality, meaning one may be a little bluer, one may have a little bit more of a tiny purple tinge, and just varied them a little bit so that they felt like they had their own quality about them, but they're all still crystal. Also, the eyes light up, and they're on kind of a rheostat so they can get brighter or down to dark. And we're building 13 of them, and those will be presented in the room in a special throne that's been carved by the art department.
We had to design the throne, which needed to work very well with that skeleton. Again, pulling largely from the sort of ancient cultures of that period.
A lot of work went into these, but I think they turned out terrific, and they have a mystical quality about them.
I always feel a little bit self-conscious when I'm talking about imagery from the series of movies that have become kind of iconic, like the hat and the leather jacket and the whip and the Ark of the Covenant, the Grail Cup, and now the crystal skull, which becomes sort of symbolic for how desperate we are as filmmakers and storytellers to reach into the imagination of what really has existed in history and even in mythology, and bring that to a modern day audience. I mean, that's really fun, but it also just increases our sort of warehouse of interesting items that people have come to identify with the whole series of Indiana Jones stories.
We're in my prop warehouse where everything eventually finds its way to after we film it. And this is a table with a few of the props that we made for the movie. This is a decorative box that was called out in the script for Spelko as a boxed sword case. And so we built this box from scratch. And then we had one of our favorite upholsterers do the interior.
And 1, 2, 3.
Wait, stop.
All the swords were made at Weta workshop in New Zealand. And these are the steel swords. This is the rapier. This is Kate's epee, which is a smaller attack sword. And we made a third sword just to balance it out. We made a long dagger for it. This gets carried around with her wherever she goes. She's in the jungle with it. It travels in one of the jeeps. Mutt eventually comes across it when he's looking for some kind of weapon and pulls out the rapier, and that starts a whole sword fight with her. This is a musical instrument that we made for John Hurt. A friend of his had been given one by a dignitary of India, and they're made in a small village in the south, and we went to great lengths to try and find one for him. We ended up making one for him, but it's a really cool, sort of makes really interesting. But we took this out of a piece of bamboo and we painted it and engraved it and added the little, these are just little washers that actually give it the sound. There's a letter that Mutt receives from Marion, his mother, and in that letter is a page with a lost language and all sorts of imagery on it that Mutt is asked to find Indiana to see if he can help decipher it and come down and help him in Peru, help him escape. So this is a letter from her that we made. This is the accompanying page that comes with it. Here's the envelope that we made. We recreated all these stamps from the period from Peru.
Set.
Indiana eventually goes to his library and pulls out a series of books. We found a beautiful book and we recreated pages, and then I had a bookbinder insert them into the book. And so he opens it up, he starts to identify images in the letter and starts to decipher it, and eventually makes notations in a small book of his. He also pulls out another book off the bookshelf, which again we found, Stephen chose all of these books. He just loved the exterior of these books. There's a clue about the Nazca lines.
He's talking about the Nazca lines.
So he goes to this book and we've inserted these pages. Again, we had a graphic artist lay out the pages. We found some photographs, we touched those up in Photoshop, added them, distressed the pages, printed them on the same paper, and inserted them in the book. And then we did these illustrations of Akator and added those to the book with all of the text.
So what we'll do is we'll push in, we'll be on a crane, I'll be able to see the lines really well, and then we do the dialogue.
Here's some basic armor and weaponry accoutrement that were used in the movie. Spears, axes, blowpipes, some shovels, some tree trunks that Indy uses to smash over one of the Russians' heads. With all of the props and weaponry that are action-oriented, we always make a real one and a rubber one. And the rubber ones are used for dangerous situations with the actors, and we make, everything from shovels to spears to blowpipes out of real and rubber.
It's him. It's Oriana himself.
Oriana's armor was made at Weta. We basically gave them some illustrations based on some original armor. And they made this out of different kinds of material and painted it. We got 3 or 4 sets made of the exact same thing.
This is an incredible find.
We got from Lucas Archives, from the past movies, we got a couple of his original haversacks, which he wore, and we got a couple of whips and whip keepers. We ended up making new whips. We had them made in Australia, and we basically distressed them down so they looked a little bit older than the original ones. We made 8-foot, 10-foot, and 16-foot whips. We made 5 or 6 haversacks matching the size, color, the width of the leather, the buckle, everything, and then we distressed those down as well. And in the end, we ended up using, as his hero haversack, one that we really liked that was just kind of shredded and perfectly distressed from the archives. And that's the one that whenever we saw him close up with it, we always put that one on him because we love that one.
Got a knife?
These were Mutt's 2 props throughout the movie. One was a switchblade that is an Italian-made, very classic 1950s switchblade, and his comb. George Lucas pulled a comb out of his back pocket and said, "Let me show you what a comb looks like from the 50s. He said he's carrying the same comb that he's had for 10 years, 15 years, and it's in great shape. So he gave Mutt a few pointers on comb etiquette for the movie. That was George. Area 51, it's the big repository for the US government's secret stuff. And so it's miles of boxes of things that they've done research on and experimented with and come across. As Spelko's men try and unearth the coffin, they throw a lot of crates out onto the ground. They smash open, and Stephen wanted to see some interesting, iconic, almost supernatural things in there, kind of like the Ark. So one of the things that we did was we recreated Moses' staff, and it doesn't turn into a snake or anything, and it doesn't part the water. We went to the original movie with Charlton Heston. We did a freeze frame on it, and we sculpted his original staff, and it's over here. And this comes crashing out of this crate and reveals itself at one point. It doesn't look like much, but it's all powerful, this staff. Yeah, I'm bringing this one home to protect mine. No. Of course, in the movie, there had to be a cameo appearance by one of the more iconic props of the past movies, and that is, of course, the Ark. And this we brought down from Lucas Archives, and let me show you how it goes together. We did this in about 12 weeks, and that's a fairly short period of time considering we have to do the research, get the approval for each individual prop from Stephen, and then manufacture or find them. We could be searching for an individual thing for weeks, and then we have to say, can't find it, we have to make it. We really hit the ground running, but it was really fun. Stephen gets very excited. You can bring things into his office, lay them out, and he just gets really excited about it, and he's incredibly decisive about what he likes. So it makes the process just genuinely fun. It's great. Indiana Jones is an amazing project to be involved in. My entire department has just been, thrilled to be a part of it. And yeah, I mean, if we can contribute something that becomes an iconic prop, we'll just be thrilled. It's just, it's something for our kids to watch and something for us to watch with gratification. It's a huge movie, and yeah, we're so happy to be a part of it.
On Raiders of the Lost Ark, I was a model maker. I built the fire canyon that where the Nazis meet their final doom when the flames come out of the Ark. On Temple of Doom, I was chief model maker, and I was responsible for creating sets for the pit and friar. And then on Last Crusade, I did some art directing, and I worked with the matte department. The main shot that I remember is the leap of faith when Indy thinks he's stepping out into a chasm. He's actually stepping onto a camouflage bridge, and I created that. Now for Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, it's nearly all digital. I'm doing one small miniature set, but everything else has been digital. Digital photography, digital matte painting, 3D modeling and rendering. And so that's completely different too. And the great thing is that it just keeps changing and evolving.
Well, one of the first things we got to do, which was the opening of the movie, is the sort of the famous dissolve from the Paramount logo into the sort of location that sort of sets the scene. And, you know, I mean, we first saw it as the animatic, and in the case of this film, it was a dissolve from the Paramount logo into a prairie dog mound, and the dirt breaks away, the prairie dog comes out, looks around, then jumps out the way as this vehicle comes and runs it over. And in the case of this shot, they had a practical plate they shot on location, and then we went and we did some rough animation of this to sort of figure it all out, and then we did a stage shoot for the prairie dog mound itself on a blue screen collapsing away with a little blue mandrel pushing through, and then we went in and did the animation to that for the final sort of performance. So we actually did have this guy, which was nicknamed Buster. He's the stuffed prairie dog, who's as you can see is a little worse for wear. And he's been, you know, he's been soaked and blow dried and clean, but he sort of provided sort of reference as far as lighting and scale. So they would shoot this guy just to help the guys with the fur and all that kind of stuff. And that's what will sort of end up in the movie.
We're one of the first people to wander into the film because we need to get the, we call them assets, sort of ready to flow up the pipeline early on. And there's this infinite list of variables that we need to focus on in order to get something to hold together at the end of the day. And photo reference is a big help, not only for texture, but for understanding how things put together and how they looked on the set. Once we've gathered sufficient reference so that we can start building these things, model making 101 really quickly is that forms in the computer are defined by lines and points, and you can move those points and you can add more points, and if you keep doing that for about 2 weeks you get a car. Or in the case of this film, you keep moving those points around until you get dragon heads on top of stones with some vases.
So after Dave or Dave's crew creates the shape in the computer, then it gets handed over to the paint department or the texture department as a gray box without all the wood and pictures on it. And so based on photo reference that are taken on set, it's the texture department's job to put not only the color on there, but how bumpy is this? Wood has a different surface quality than a metal table does, and things like that, whether it's super shiny chrome metal or painted car metal or things like that. And that's what we would apply to the models that the model department creates. When those items move down the pipeline and get put into a shot, they can be lit and have proper material qualities so they can fit right into a scene, and then the compositors do their magic.
In the shot, the crate that they're looking for has special properties, and again, those special properties are not ones that you can establish in the physical world. So it falls on us to create that. First, the first things that you get is we start with nothing there, and then we tilt up, and we have the box, and as you can tell in this area, the set ends. So we flesh out this environment, and the lights go miles and miles deep, and then we do treat it with haze. And then we have all of the special properties of the computer-generated chunks of stuff on the ground that are sort of wobbling along. And then the dog tags and gun straps, they all move in sort of a magical, magnetic way. And then this is the final, where we've obviously done a lot to create this world that obviously can't be achieved in the real world. Again, compositing, that's the bread and butter, is taking work from other departments and nudging a little further along to give it that sense of reality.
On this picture, we are doing a lot of miniature work, and that's for several reasons.
One of them being that Steven Spielberg is and George Lucas too, is very careful about how realistic the work that we do is. And to do certain things that have to do with pyrotechnics, nuclear explosions, things that need to have weight, we need to go the miniature route. And then complement that and supplement that with computer work.
Kerner Optical, they develop all the miniatures that we use throughout the movie, whether they're actually blowing the miniatures up or they're actually just building something that then later gets photographed to be put into the shot later. We have an example here of one of the models they actually made for us. This was for the temple sequence at the end of the movie. We asked them to build this particular miniature. We had it built on a Lazy Susan so it could be rotated by one artist and then photographed by another one. And then they would get the lighting right to match into the actual shot. And then we would bring that work back here to ILM and then place it into the actual painting. We would also do a lot of close-up work as well for miscellaneous shots. So we would pull out some of the detail from the actual vines, some of the bricks as well, for placing later in the backgrounds. The plates were shot on location at Universal Studios, but it was about 2 stories tall and it needed to be about 6 stories tall. So we used the photographs that we collected from this particular miniature to extend the temple up another 4 stories. So here you can see the actual set as it was in Universal Studios. We have the blue screen back in the distance and you can see that the actor's actually running onto the ground. So you know this set here isn't 6 stories tall. And then using the photographs that we got from the actual miniature at Kerner, shot in the right sort of lighting environment, we reprojected those photographs onto CG geometry and then place it into the shot and extend the actual temple. And obviously we put the mountain behind as well. And then later, smoke was integrated and all the guys that were running out of the temple were rotoed out and placed over the actual extension at the bottom.
To get all of that stuff moving and churning and keeping that energy moving right at camera, the best solution that Steven and Pablo decided was to do that in miniature.
This is a rocker mortar filled with aluminum oxide. It's basically a giant shotgun blast. And there's the camera right there. So it's a shotgun full of aluminum pointed straight into the lens of the camera.
We built 8 scale houses that were all designed to be destroyed. We set up a huge deck. Our neighborhood was something like 60 by 100 feet. In that neighborhood would be multiple houses. So we had, going up the street, like 15 houses, something like that. In the houses, we had 100-gallon air cannons that were designed and actually installed into the set by our effects supervisor, Jeff Herron. So the 100-gallon air cannons were providing a tremendous push with air. And along with some pyrotechnics and primer cord, we used big Volkswagen fans to keep the air moving and get a tremendous amount of push on this thing. So in the first shot, that's what happens. So we had to destroy the neighborhood in the first shot, and then we wiped the slate clean and we brought in a whole nother set of houses for the high angle, which destroyed even more houses at one time for the big master wide shot. But when we have the thing coming down and destroying 15 houses at one time, we had the ability to only do this one time. So that was a very, very stressful situation.
How you doing, Bubba?
Last wire, boss.
Right on. Oh no, it blew her arms off. Look, it's intact.
So that footage is handed over to ILM because our nuclear wave was confined to the sort of the width of the street and the houses combined, okay? It was enough for us to create that much energy. But if you're looking at a shot like that, the band of energy coming at us would be, all the way side to side. So ours was working in the middle and they have extended it digitally, in addition to the Digimap background.
We were given an animatic that had placement, general size, and this is the plate that we received to work with. And we were told that the bare part of the screen was meant for the nuke
and we were left to match it with our realistic looking bomb. And you can see we had to basically remove the sky, replace the sky, add quite a bit of debris and dust and flame to the ground, and of course the giant nuclear explosion.
One thing about the jungle is that it was interspersed between the real location stuff in Hawaii and then with our visual effects shots. Now, the good news was we had reference. The bad news is we had reference because we had to match it and had to look like that. So that made our job a lot more difficult. So we had what we call the bowling alley effect. You had the road, you had the verticals, and it was all cleared out in between, so it looked like a bowling alley, just a straight shot. The idea is we had to bring the jungle in and close everything down to make it claustrophobic, to sell it to the audience that they are driving through the jungle, they're not on a road.
We've given the director the freedom to go on location and shoot in a safe environment for him to actually get the atmosphere, the wind, the noise, the bugs in the air, everything that really tells the viewer that this is a real dangerous location, but then take it back to ILM and actually enhance and make it just a little bit more dangerous. So it really does give the director the freedom to go and shoot wherever he likes, and knowing we can always come back to ILM and add that element of danger that he couldn't necessarily do on location.
We couldn't very well be shooting at and hooking up all the pyro when you have the talent right next to the bushes they're driving by. It's a little bit dangerous, so that's when we go to the stage. We will take a couple of days and go through and just get the pyro crew and do a bunch of different versions, kind of get the different feeling depending on where you're at. So then we have the bullet hits on the trees that we were adding in to make it look like all these explosions, so that they're actually shooting at the characters. But you want to get the fall off the lighting correct based on the plate, and all these little things that you don't really think about until it goes into actually blending it into the plate and making it feel like it was all shot at one time.
On this movie, what the script required was something that we couldn't ever capture, corral, and direct. So for the first time, breaking the tradition of practical creepy crawlies, ILM had to provide the creepy crawlies for Crystal Skull.
What? Big damn ants, go!
The ant sequence has always been there. Ever since the very, very beginning, the very first draft, we had the ant sequence. It was even in a script for Last Crusade that was actually done about the Monkey King in Africa, which had this army getting thrown into the pit with the ants and having to eat them and all that sort of thing. So that's an old idea that sort of managed to migrate through all of the drafts.
And here it became more animation working in conjunction with the simulation team to figure out a way of creating just crowds and crowds of ants. So again, the process begins looking at reference and then doing some animation tests to help show how these things would move. And from there, we provided some basic animation cycles, just repetitive walking, stopping actions that get plugged into this sort of engine that allows hordes and hordes of ants to be created. And then on top of that, we would keyframe animate specific ants for various shots. There's a sequence where Spalko is pointing a gun at Indy and an ant crawls through over her hand and then bites her. And that individual ant would be keyframe animated. But then in a wide shot where you just see tens of thousands, they would all be handled through simulations.
The crowd system is how we control the ants. You can't animate each one by hand individually, so you assign behaviors. And the behaviors for these guys were generally head in this direction, but we added things like hesitation, and they would chase after certain characters, and they would stack on top of each other, which was something new that we did for the film. So we had some really challenging shots where ants needed to be crawling all over the characters. And for those, we would take our CG version of the character and do a match animation to what the actor did. And that match animation had to be so tight and so specific that the ants would stick exactly where we put them on the plate.
Don't move your head at all. Ah! Ah! Don't freeze. Screaming.
Got it.
Good. Go!
So this is kind of one of the main bad guys And this is some of our early tests of being able to stream ants up and over him into his mouth, and in the end, you just end up with enough of his face to kind of recognize him throughout the entire shot.
3, 2, 1, action!
He was rigged up with a bunch of wires and was pulled up into this mound, and one of the most difficult parts was trying to figure out how do we get all the ants to react in such a way that it looks as though they're pushing him up from underneath. And as he's swinging around, whether we have ants kind of coming off his body or other ones kind of filling in the gaps where his legs are, all that had to be choreographed to figure out how best to move him from one point to another.
So I just worry that are there too few ants leading this charge?
Okay. Well, take a look at it on film. If you still feel that way, then we'll increase the amount, maybe by double or something like that. Yeah. Okay.
We could just cut this into the other Raiders documentary. Remember where I said we need 7,000 more snakes? I could say, we need about 140,000 more ants. There's just enough. There's just not enough ants, at the forefront of this shot.
We would get together with Stephen on a weekly basis to review our work via conference calls, like a video conference calls every week. And it was actually in a meeting once that Stephen suggested this idea that if the room was spinning, it could be like one of the skulls would stop, one of the skeletons would stop, and all the others would form in, and with each one kind of intersecting, it would form out this alien that would then eventually come out of its chair.
What the hell is that?
A portal! A pathway to another dimension!
Don't think we want to go that way.
I think one of the most challenging things that we as visual effects artists have to do is the distraction of the tempo. At the end of the film is basically taking the tempo and converting it into particles. And so we had to do a lot of research and development into that. It's not just particles that turn into water or dust or fire. It's behaving in a specific way, and it has to be completely realistic.
Particle simulation is basically a lot of tiny little pieces which have fields which are applied onto these little things. Say it's a rock, or say it's a bunch of debris, and basically we give we pass fields through these particles or these objects. Say it's like a hurricane force wind or a bunch of gravity, and the objects react in a certain way to start moving the way that we want it to.
And in the case of this film, it's not enough that these things break apart as individual stones. The stones themselves have to break apart. So this all needs to be split up into tiny pieces. What we're looking at here is a small portion of the antechamber. And by the time you spread all that out and fill the room, we had about 8,000 individual parts in this one set, which included about 50 to 60 of the artifacts of the room and all the architectural detail. The largest set we built, the Temple Heart set, has 34,000 pieces.
So we built a lot of bricks, and covered them inside and out, all the way around.
The script and the animatic had everything being sucked up into this hole, and at one point it was going to be like a black hole, and we thought it'd be a little more fun to make it functional, looking like it, something working in the ship. So we came up with this blender concept, and it looks we've been calling it the garbage disposal. And it basically inhales the entire throne room to get rid of that and reveal the ship. And the spaceship was the biggest design element that we had to tackle. We wanted to give it an Area 51 B-movies kind of 50s vibe, so that it had a kind of vintage feel. And here's our spaceship taking off. But yeah, it's a massive undertaking to fill in those blanks.
Part of the crater is holding back this immense lake. And there's an event that causes the walls of this crater to crumble and the lake to burst through and then fill the crater valley and hide the temple and its remains beneath this lake. Usually, you know, doing water, people will say if you do it under a certain scale, say like quarter scale or even sixth scale, after that it just doesn't look right, because water is water and you can't really change its physical properties obviously too much and how it reacts. But we built this model at 24th scale because in fact the cliffs were meant to be, you know, roughly 500 feet tall. And what we did was we just build sections of it to have the water action, the cliffs crumbling away. But one of the things that helped us on this was that the camera was actually very far away, about 100 feet away when we filmed it. So you never got a real close-up view of the water interacting with our set. But when it had to crumble apart, it had to have weight to it, and it had to be able to somewhat withstand the force of the water long enough, at least for all the water to break up. But CG was then going to put it all together in a big giant matte painting. So what you actually see in the movie is much larger than what we built.
You know, a lot of the work that we're doing is groundbreaking, you know, particle simulation work that couldn't be done 2 years ago. And it's all this effort, you know, great team effort that we've been working on for the last couple of years. You know, like I said before, I mean, I never stress when I do a project like this, because I always know that the kind of people that we work with over here at LM are great, and they're funny, enjoy to work with. You know, every morning I you know, get up just to come to the Dailies, just to take a look at the stuff that we do. You know.
Excellent. Well, this is all fabulous. Thank you. This is fantastic stuff.
Okay, we're good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, let's go downstairs and look at this.
So, we will do this, what is the expression? Old-fashioned way.
In keeping with our desire to make the movie as close to the other three as possible, Steven stayed on film for the entire process. In other words, we did not shoot digitally, and we did not edit digitally. We edited on film, which is very unusual today.
By the time we're a week finished with shooting, Steven will have the movie cut. And I'm always amazed at just how fast Michael is. He doesn't need to be cutting electronically because he's as fast as anybody cutting on Avid.
I think I'd cover my ears if I were you.
I think the most difficult for me, probably for Steven too, was that truck chase in the jungle, because that took a lot of intercutting. There was the plain action stuff with the principals in the cars.
You fight like a young man.
And the second unit shooting trucks and all of that, all the action. So those elements had to go together, and that was a lot of fun to do. It was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun to do.
We had several members of the creative team back from the first three movies, and certainly one of the most important was Ben Burt, who was the sound designer and had worked on all three movies.
Ben has such a good ear for this. And Ben's been doing Star Wars pictures, he's been working at Pixar. I mean, he does stuff that defies the imagination. And he creates sounds like you've never heard before.
Well, because we've done 3 previous indie films, it's a well-established style and a well-established library of sounds, and any new Indiana Jones adventure is going to use whips, guns, explosions. So it's fortunate that we created a huge library for the first 3 films, and that we can start with that as a basic foundation upon which then we can build the sounds for the new movie. One of the first tasks I had was to really go back and gather all of the sounds together that had been created for the previous films, and we hired my son Benny Burt to do that job, because it meant going into lots of old tapes and older recording formats which are no longer used anymore, and we wanted to go back to the original recordings wherever we could and digitize them now, get the highest quality copy into the computer, and then classify the sounds and get them all into a searchable database, because there's really thousands of sounds. The whip in the current film, much of it is taken from our original whip recordings, but we also actually did some new recordings as well.
Get on, Gramps!
There's a big chase that happens at Marshall College, and that was kind of one of the main things that I was dealing with. And there's lots of different vehicles throughout the film, and in this particular sequence there's a couple mid-century American cars, and then there's this motorcycle as well.
This is crazy! Somebody's gonna get hurt!
There's big crowds of students yelling and running, you know, the library involved, there's crashes and skids and all that fun stuff. Richard Hems, who's the supervising sound editor, is the resident car fanatic here on not only on the ranch but on this particular show. So it was his job to go out, find the vehicles, and record them.
I've always wanted to do a big sword fight. When I think of the indie films, I always think of, I want to give things a classic sound. So I go back and I think, well, what are my favorite films from the far past that had a great sword fight in it? And there's a film called The Adventures of Don Juan with Errol Flynn. It has, I thought, some of the best sword fighting sounds in it. And so I searched around to find just the same type of rapiers that were used in that film. And when I found them, lo and behold, they sounded exactly like I wanted them to. The ants flowing across the ground is pretty much some sounds my son and I recorded pouring some corn feed that is used to feed the animals. Made a really good, steady, flowing sound, which we use for the ants in motion. To that, you add a layer of constantly crunching eggshells, just in your, in your hands, just crunch, crunch, crunch. And then on top of that, you add some human vocals that have been sped up, and some of them are run backwards, so that you get just a tiny sense of them being alive. And I think adjusting the amounts of each one of these elements can create this attack of the ants. There's been a conscious choice to create the supernatural sounds as if maybe they were created for movies back in the 1950s. And that's my department, because those are the films that I saw as a kid. And I've tried to derive a style from those old movies, create new sounds in an old style. As an example, one of the little buzzing sounds that the skull makes is a sound I actually just heard in the parking lot. I went out to get in my car to go home, and I could hear this buzzing sound, and I realized it was a lamp post there in the parking lot, and something maybe was wrong with the lamp on top of the post, and it made a really loud buzzing sound. So I thought, that's interesting. So I had my recorder in the car, so I just recorded that sound right on the spot. And have found a lot of use for that bad electrical lamppost sound as a prime element in the skulls themselves.
Andy, the eyes.
There's a transition at the climax of the film from what I would say organic, natural sound, which is as the temple falls apart, we are hearing basically earthquake sounds, thunder and rumble and cracking stone and falling debris. But as that happens, it reveals an unusual, very high-tech, somewhat alien environment, the interior of a giant device, a travel machine or something of this nature. And so the transition goes from natural, organic sounds to a very electronic sound.
What the hell is that?
A portal! A pathway to another dimension!
There's a history of Indiana Jones, and we're trying to stay true to the history of it because it's such a great franchise, and I think the main goal is to keep with that spirit and keep it fresh, keep it new, but always have the link back to the earlier films.
You're a teacher?
Part-time.
talk about iconography. What really gives Harrison a lot of his esprit de corps is John Williams with that theme that he came up with. And Indiana Jones cannot exist without that theme. And of course, that theme would be nothing without Indiana Jones.
Jonesy!
So in the making of this picture, you'd hear the cast and crew whistling or humming this theme.
The initial presentations in the first film, if I'm at all right, were probably not march-like, but more heroic in the sense of energizing the character and creating a melody associated with Harrison's character. I think the emergence of it as a march was probably at the end of the process, where I had to write an end credit for the film, and the theme seemed to lend itself to a kind of march presentation. Mutt's music is principally a piece that I've actually called it on the soundtrack album, The Adventures of Mutt, because the combination of his sword fighting and his swinging on these vines and the heroics that he does, it refers in a little bit of a way to The Adventures of Robin Hood. The music is not similar, but only in the sense that it's a young hero's music in the tradition of the swashbuckler. I think the reappearance of Marion in the film is a stroke of wonder, and I think some of the warmest scenes have to do with Karen's portrayal of Marion.
Oh, Marion, you had to go and get yourself kidnapped.
Not like you did any better.
As you can tell, I was a fan of hers from day one and enjoyed doing the Marion theme from the first film, and then relished the opportunity to bring it back to sort of paint it around and accompany her scenes and their scenes together.
Don't ever do that again.
Yes, dear.
Irina Spalko presented to me an opportunity to create a sexy film noir, if you like, theme to accompany a femme fatale, where you would hear a slithering saxophone and certain harmonic progressions that would depict this dark side of sensuality, and she's depicted musically with this, if you'd like to say, homage to the great film villainesses of the 1940s.
That's really beautiful.
She's not supposed to be sexy, but she is to me.
Oh yeah, I think she'll be to a lot of men in black.
She's my kind of babe, you know. She will rule the world.
Exactly.
The Crystal Skull, certainly for its various appearances on the film, needed to have some musical identification. And what I tried to do was to try to get some kind of a homage, if you like, to the science fiction films of the 50s that would bring an aspect of nostalgia into this piece.
I want to just tell you that not only are you a blessing, but you're the only guy I know, except for one guy, who deserves to wear this.
Working with Steven is a particular privilege. And we come back to the series with the original team after 28 years. When you think about it, it's a remarkable thing. And this film is a very good illustration of that kind of very unique bringing together of people and collaboration and having it work so well after so many years.
Making movies, really, it's a collaboration. It's like an army traveling. In this particular case, going to airports and going to different countries and getting set up and then leaving again, going to some other countries. So we travel a lot and we don't do it alone. This is really a collaborative medium, especially an Indiana Jones film needs the best of the best in every department to throw in their ideas. And I was fortunate to have great people on the fourth Indiana Jones adventure. Are there good crosses across here?
There was, sir, yeah. Give them more of that.
Yeah, well, yeah, just keep it alive
Yeah,
and
yeah, we
active.
do,
All
yeah.
three guys should be into the burrows.
Yeah. Very good. And then this one. You sure you got film in that camera?
Oh, that's great. That's gonna be good. Go right to the shot. The guy's running in, crane up. It's like this. Bring up faster.
Look, Harry. 3, 2, 1, now.
you.